Beneath the golden haze of Morocco's northern hills, where the wind hums low through empty valleys and time itself seems reluctant to move, lies a circle of stones, massive, silent, and impossibly old. The locals call it Masura. To the eye, it looks like nothing more than weathered pillars scattered across a ridge, but to those who listen, truly listen, it feels like standing before a secret the earth has been trying to forget. There are 58 stones still standing, each one worn smooth by centuries of storms. Some lean at strange angles, others tilt inward, as if bowing to something no longer there. In the center rises a mound, a burial hill perhaps, but no body has ever been found. No inscription, no carvings, no explanation. Just silence and a question echoing through it. Archaeologists say Masura is ancient, older than the Roman world that later walked across this land. Some estimate it to be 5,000 years old. Others whisper it could be older still, reaching back into the shadowed era before recorded time, when stone and star were mankind's only scriptures. From above, the formation looks deliberate, almost mathematical. The circle measures 60 meters across, with its stones arranged in a precise ellipse, aligned with uncanny accuracy to the rising and setting of the sun during the solstices. To the ancients, this was not coincidence, this was communication, a dialogue between earth and sky. But who built it, and why? One legend says it was the tomb of Antaeus, the giant son of Poseidon and Gaia, the earth itself. In Greek myth, Antaeus was undefeatable so long as his feet touched the ground, for his strength flowed directly from the soil. It was Hercules who finally defeated him, lifting him into the air, severing his power, and crushing him in his arms. Some say Hercules buried Antaeus right here, beneath this Moroccan hill, and marked the spot with the great circle of stones, an eternal warning about the limits of human strength. For thousands of years, local Berber tribes repeated the tale, calling this place Krub el Hunch, the tomb of the giant. But if this were merely myth, why does the site feel so unnervingly deliberate? Why do its stones seem older than the myths themselves? When archaeologists first excavated Masura in the 1930s, they expected to find clear evidence of a Bronze Age burial. They found fragments, pottery shards, traces of ancient fire pits, but nothing to explain the scale. The stones were far too large, far too precisely arranged for a simple grave. Each one weighs several tons. The nearest quarry lies miles away. There are no written records, no tools left behind. Just these monoliths, dragged, lifted, and positioned by hands that knew the language of the cosmos. Standing inside the circle, you feel a strange pull, not physical but spiritual. The sound of the wind shifts. Your heartbeat seems to slow. Every direction feels significant. It's as if you've stepped into a calendar built not of paper or wood, but of pure geometry. This is not chaos. This is intention, ancient and absolute. Some researchers have suggested Masura might be part of a lost North African megalithic tradition, one that predates even Stonehenge. The similarities are eerie: circular layout, solar alignment, ritualistic central mound, but there's a problem. Stonehenge sits in England, 1,000 miles and a sea away. How could two cultures separated by continents and ages create monuments with the same celestial precision? That question has haunted archaeologists for decades. Could there have been an earlier civilization? A forgotten culture that once spanned oceans before history began? A culture that understood the stars not as myths, but as instruments? Megaliths like Masura appear not only in Morocco, but across Europe, the Middle East, even South America, each different, yet somehow speaking the same architectural language, as if following an ancient code humanity has since forgotten. Mainstream archaeology dismisses the idea as romantic speculation. But look closely at the stones. The surface is not random erosion. Some carry faint grooves, straight, parallel, deliberate, marks that could only have been made by tools harder than the stone itself, tools we no longer know how to replicate. And then there's the orientation. Masura is tilted slightly, a fraction of a degree off from true east-west. That tilt perfectly matches the precessional shift of the Earth's axis over thousands of years, suggesting the site may have been aligned to the sun as it appeared in a different age. If true, Missoura was built not 5,000 years ago, but more than 10, at a time when, according to conventional history, humans were still hunter-gatherers, a time when no organized civilization should have existed. And yet, here it stands. Massive, silent, inexplicable. So what was Missoura really? A tomb for a giant? A temple for forgotten gods? Or a remnant of a civilization erased by time itself? Every explanation leads to more questions. If it were only a tomb, why align it with the stars? If it were a temple, where are the offerings, the inscriptions, the idols? And if it were a calendar, who were its priests and where did they go? There's a pattern emerging here, across continents, across epochs. Monuments too advanced for their supposed time. Astronomical alignments too precise to be accidental. And yet all of them forgotten, as if someone had pressed reset on human history. Perhaps that's the real mystery of Missoura. Not that it exists, but that we forgot it did. Civilizations rise and fall, knowledge blooms and withers, and every few thousand years, the earth buries the memory of what we once were. What remains are these markers, ancient scars in stone, whispering to anyone who still listens. Remember. As the sun sets behind the Moroccan hills, the stones cast long shadows, stretching like fingers across the ground, pointing toward the west, toward the horizon, toward something unseen. Maybe that's where our next clue lies, because across that same horizon, beneath the sands of another ancient land, waits a site that defies everything we think we know about civilization. A city buried before the birth of writing itself. In the next chapter, we travel east to the plains of southeastern Turkey, where a hill once thought to be natural turned out to be the oldest temple ever built by human hands. A place so ancient, it rewrote history itself. The world knows it as Göbekli Tepe. But what if it's not the beginning of civilization? What if it's the last memory of a world that came before? Göbekli Tepe, the first temple and the lost memory of the builders, high in the limestone hills of southeastern Turkey near the ancient city of Şanlıurfa, lies a mound, quiet, unassuming, and almost ordinary. For centuries, shepherds led their flocks across its slopes, never realizing that beneath their feet slept one of the most astonishing secrets in human history. It was called Göbekli Tepe, Potbelly Hill. To the villagers, it was just another rise in the earth. To archaeologists, when they finally uncovered it, it became something else entirely. A place so old, so advanced, so deliberate, that it shattered the timeline of civilization itself. In 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt began to dig. What he found shouldn't have existed. Massive stone pillars, 10, 20, some weighing more than 16 tons, arranged in perfect circles. Each pillar carved with intricate reliefs of animals, serpents, lions, boars, birds, and abstract symbols that seemed almost alive. But the deeper he went, the more impossible it became. Göbekli Tepe wasn't a village, it wasn't a fortress, it was a temple, and it was built 11,600 years ago. That's 7,000 years before the pyramids, 6,000 before Stonehenge. A temple built by people who, according to everything we knew, shouldn't have been able to build anything at all. At that time, humanity was still supposed to be hunter-gatherers, nomads surviving off the land, moving with the seasons, with no cities, no writing, no agriculture. And yet here was Göbekli Tepe, a monument of architecture, geometry, and artistry, crafted by hands that somehow mastered techniques of engineering we still struggle to fully understand. The stones were not random. Each stood in deliberate formation, forming rings some 30 meters wide, with pairs of towering T-shaped pillars at their center. And on those central pillars, carved into the stone, were arms, belts, and animal figures, suggesting they represented beings. Not gods carved by primitive imagination, but entities standing tall and watching. Guardians, perhaps, or something older? The carvings weren't decorative, they told stories or warnings. Foxes, scorpions, vultures, snakes, symbols of death, power, and transformation. One relief shows a headless human figure beneath a vulture, a chilling image that repeats across ancient cultures, symbolizing the soul's release from the body. It's as if the people who built Göbekli Tepe weren't celebrating life. They were recording an encounter with death, with something cosmic and terrifying. But how did they do it? There were no metal tools, no beasts of burden, no wheels. Yet the pillars, each weighing between 10 and 20 tons, were quarried, carved, and erected with precision. Limestone blocks cut from bedrock miles away, lifted, balanced, aligned. It would take modern cranes to replicate such a feat, and even then, it would be slow, dangerous work. So how did prehistoric humans achieve it 11,000 years ago? Klaus Schmidt spent years searching for clues, fragments of flint, primitive tools, and evidence of small camps around the site. But there were no traces of permanent dwellings, no food storage, no hearths large enough for a settlement. It seemed the builders lived elsewhere, traveling to this place for one purpose alone, ritual. That changed everything. It meant religion. The idea of gods, of ceremony, of sacred architecture existed before civilization. Göbekli Tepe wasn't built by farmers. It was built by dreamers, by people who hadn't yet learned to cultivate wheat, but somehow understood geometry, who hadn't built houses but built temples, who hadn't mapped their world but mapped the sky. And that last detail, the sky, may be the key. When researchers analyzed the alignment of the pillars, they noticed something extraordinary. The enclosures appeared to correspond to constellations, not as they are now, but as they were in 10,000 BC. The central pair of pillars in one circle faced the point where the star Sirius first rose at dawn after the Ice Age. Other enclosures aligned with Orion, Cygnus and the Summer Triangle, formations associated with rebirth and the afterlife in later Sumerian, Egyptian and Greek traditions. But this was millennia before those civilizations. How could these people have known the sky with such precision? And why build a temple to it? Some scientists propose Göbekli Tepe may have been an astronomical observatory used to track the precession of the stars, the slow wobble of the Earth's axis that takes 26,000 years to complete. If true, the builders were measuring cycles of time longer than the lifespan of any civilization. They weren't just worshipping gods, they were documenting cosmic order. Others believe the site holds a darker story, a memory of catastrophe. In 2017, researchers from the University of Edinburgh proposed that the carvings at Göbekli Tepe record the impact of a comet around 10,950 BC, the same period when a sudden freeze, known as the Younger Dryas, nearly wiped out early humanity. The images of scorpions, headless humans, and vultures might not be mythic at all. They could be historical, carved by survivors who witnessed the sky falling. If that theory is right, Göbekli Tepe was not a temple of beginnings, but a monument to survival, a message carved in stone. We lived through fire and ice. We rebuilt, but then the mystery deepens. Around 8,000 BC, after 15 centuries of use, Göbekli Tepe was deliberately buried. Not abandoned, buried. Every enclosure, every pillar carefully packed with layers of stone and dirt, preserved perfectly for 10,000 years. Whoever did this didn't want it destroyed. They wanted it hidden, protected, but from what? From time, from invaders, or from being remembered? It's as if humanity built something extraordinary and then covered its own memory, sealing it beneath the soil to protect the secret of its origins. Some believe Göbekli Tepe marks the transition from chaos to order, from the hunter's world to the farmer's world. That the memory of a great disaster pushed our ancestors to settle, to control the land, to rebuild life. But others see something deeper, that Göbekli Tepe is not a beginning at all, but a remnant, the last outpost of an older world, a world that fell, a civilization erased by catastrophe, leaving behind a single message carved in stone. We were here. What if the builders of Göbekli Tepe weren't the first humans to rise, but the last survivors of something older, something we've forgotten, Because when you compare this site to others across the world, from the megaliths of Masura to the pyramids of Egypt to the temples of South America, a strange symmetry emerges. Different continents, different cultures, same patterns, same sacred geometry, same obsession with the sky. It's almost as if these were the scattered memories of one great civilization, fragmented after a cataclysm, retold in stone across millennia. Each monument a chapter, each carving a warning. And we, the descendants of that forgotten age, are only now learning how to read it. Today, Göbekli Tepe stands silent again. The site is protected, enclosed beneath a steel dome to shield it from erosion. Tourists walk along suspended pathways, staring down at the ancient stones as cameras flash. But beneath the noise there is still silence, still mystery, still something watching. The wind passes over the plateau carrying the same dust that once covered the stones for 10,000 years, the same dust that once hid our beginnings or our endings. And when the sun sets, the shadow of each T-shaped pillar stretches across the ground like a compass, pointing not north or south, but backward into time, towards something buried far deeper than any archaeologist can reach, our own forgotten story. Across the Mediterranean, another monument rises from the desert, a mountain of stone so vast that its builders seem to command gravity itself. The world calls it a pyramid. But what if it isn't just a tomb? What if it's an engine of energy, geometry, and memory? A message from the same lost civilization that built Göbekli Tepe. In the next chapter, we enter Egypt and confront one of history's most enduring enigmas, the Great Pyramid of Giza. The Great Pyramid of Giza, the machine of the gods. The sun rises over the Giza plateau, and the desert burns with light. Through the morning haze, three colossal silhouettes emerge, monuments so immense, so ancient, that they make the surrounding landscape seem young. For more than 4,000 years, these structures have watched empires rise and fall, their stone faces unmoved by time. They are the last of the 7 wonders of the ancient world still standing. And at their heart, the greatest enigma of all bows, the Great Pyramid of Giza. It stands there like a riddle cast in limestone, 481 feet tall, weighing nearly 6 million tons, made from over 2 million individual blocks. Each block cut, transported and placed with precision so exact that even modern engineers struggle to explain how it was done. For centuries, scholars have called it a tomb, a final resting place for Pharaoh Khufu. But no mummy was ever found inside. No inscription names Khufu as its builder. No soot marks line its corridors, suggesting no torches ever burned within its halls. The pyramid is silent, too silent for a tomb, too perfect for a coincidence. So if it wasn't a tomb, what was it? To understand the mystery, you must first understand the precision. Each side of the Great Pyramid aligns almost perfectly with true north, south, east, and west, within a fraction of a single degree. Its base is nearly square to mathematical perfection. The length of each side differs by less than 2 inches. How did people living over 4,000 years ago achieve such engineering mastery? Without steel, without lasers, without computers. And more importantly, why? The deeper you look, the stranger it gets. The pyramid's dimensions encode numbers and ratios that appear everywhere in nature, in planetary orbits, in musical harmony, even in the structure of light itself. Its perimeter divided by its height equals exactly 2p, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. How could the builders have known about P, a concept supposedly discovered thousands of years later? Coincidence? Or knowledge inherited from something older, a civilization already understanding the universal language of geometry? Step inside and the sense of wonder deepens. The corridors narrow, carved within human precision, leading to chambers whose purposes remain elusive. The so-called King's Chamber, built from massive granite blocks transported 500 miles from Aswan, fits together so tightly that even a sheet of paper cannot slide between them. The chamber's ceiling, 5 layers of granite beams each weighing 70 tons, was engineered to distribute weight perfectly, preventing collapse for eternity. No decorative carvings, no treasures, just raw mathematical intent. Some researchers, from Nikola Tesla to modern physicists, have suggested that the pyramid was not a tomb at all, but a machine. A structure designed to harness the natural energies of the earth. This idea might sound strange, but consider what the structure really is. A perfect geometric shape aligned to the magnetic poles, built from quartz-rich limestone, a material that generates small electric charges when compressed or vibrated. The pyramid's air shafts, once thought to be symbolic, align precisely with specific stars, Orion's belt, Sirius, and Alpha Draconis, as if linking heaven and earth through energy and alignment. In 2018, a team of physicists from ITMO University in Russia discovered something remarkable. When electromagnetic waves of certain frequencies strike the Great Pyramid, energy concentrates within its internal chambers and beneath its base. In other words, the structure acts as a resonant cavity, amplifying electromagnetic energy. Here it's not just a monument, it's an instrument. Ancient Egyptian texts spoke of the benben, the sacred stone that connected the gods to the earth. A pyramid-shaped relic said to vibrate with the essence of creation itself. Was the Great Pyramid built as a scaled manifestation of that myth, a massive resonance chamber designed to connect heaven and earth? Some ancient accounts describe how priests could speak with the gods from within the pyramid, not through magic, but through resonance. Sound itself and vibration frequency may have been the medium through which the divine was reached. Inside the Grand Gallery, the acoustics are unlike anything else on Earth. A single hum, a clap, even a breath seems to linger. Engineers who have entered it describe an eerie harmonic echo, as if the very air vibrates. When sound waves hit the limestone, they reflect perfectly. The shape amplifies the frequency until it feels like the entire chamber is alive. Could this have been part of a ritual, a sonic awakening that caused the structure to vibrate with the frequency of the planet itself? If you view the pyramid through that lens, as a harmonic machine, suddenly the mystery begins to make sense. The ancient Egyptians were not just builders. They were physicists of spirit and sound. They believed the universe was born through vibration, the voice of the god Ptah calling matter into existence. In their temples, sound was sacred. Every chant, every tone, every frequency had meaning. Perhaps the Great Pyramid was the ultimate temple, one that turned that divine vibration into physical resonance. But the enigma doesn't end there. The pyramid's location on the Earth is another riddle. Its coordinates align almost perfectly with the speed of light, 29.9979245 degrees. Coincidence? Perhaps, but it's a strange one, especially when you consider that the speed of light is a modern measurement, unknown until thousands of years later. How could the builders have encoded a constant of physics they shouldn't have known existed? Every stone of the Great Pyramid seems to whisper the same message. This was not random. This was knowledge, precise, deliberate, intentional, and perhaps ancient. When the Arab historian Al-Masudi visited the pyramids in the 10th century, he recorded tales told by Egyptian priests. They said the pyramids were built long before the Great Flood, to preserve knowledge from a previous world, one that perished when fire rained from the heavens and waters swallowed the earth. The pyramids, they claimed, were vaults of wisdom, holding maps of the stars, the laws of geometry, and the secrets of the soul. To most historians, these stories are just legend. But to those who have stood within the pyramid's core, feeling its impossible stillness, it doesn't feel like legend. It feels like design, like intent, a machine built not for the dead but for the living, not for kings but for civilization itself. The deeper you dig, the stranger the patterns become. The pyramid's proportions mirror the dimensions of the Earth itself. Its base corresponds to the planet's equatorial circumference, divided by 43,200, a sacred number in ancient numerology. Its height, multiplied by the same number, equals the Earth's polar radius. In other words, the pyramid is a scale model of the planet, encoded in stone thousands of years before we knew the Earth was a sphere. Whoever built it knew the world in ways that seem impossible for their time. Could it be that the pyramid builders inherited knowledge from a forgotten age, from survivors of the same lost civilization that built Göbekli Tepe? Across continents we find the same sacred geometry, circles, triangles, golden ratios, repeated in stone by cultures that supposedly never met. It's as if fragments of a greater truth were scattered after a cataclysm, leaving each civilization to rebuild a small piece of it. And in Egypt, that memory took the shape of the Great Pyramid, a beacon to the heavens built to last until we remembered. But memory fades. Over millennia, the outer casing stones of the pyramid were stripped away. Its smooth white limestone surface once gleamed so brightly that travelers called it the Light of Ra. Now, only the rough core remains, eroded, scarred, but still standing. Even damaged, it outlasts every empire that tried to claim it. Perhaps that's the lesson the pyramid carries. Endurance. Civilizations rise and crumble. Knowledge blooms and fades, but truth endures in silence. Maybe that's why it was built. Not just to preserve data, but to preserve wonder. To remind us that we were once capable of something extraordinary, and that the laws of reality might still hide mysteries we've only begun to remember. The desert wind moves over the plateau, whispering through the gaps between stones. As night falls, the stars rise over Giza, the same constellations that once aligned with the pyramid's chambers, marking Orion's belt above the horizon. To the ancients, Orion was Osiris, the god of death and rebirth. And perhaps that's exactly what the Great Pyramid represents. Not a tomb of a pharaoh, but the resurrection of knowledge itself. But what if this knowledge didn't end in Egypt? What if the same geometry, the same obsession with stone, stars, and sound, appeared on the other side of the world, long before we ever believed humans could have crossed oceans? In the next chapter, we travel west, to a mountain wrapped in clouds, where stones weighing hundreds of tons fit together like puzzle pieces, as if carved by the same invisible hands. The journey continues to Peru and the ancient mystery of Sacsayhuaman. Sacsayhuaman, the stone fortress that defied time high in the thin air of the Peruvian Andes, above the ancient city of Cusco, stands a fortress that should not exist. Its walls are built from stones so immense that modern cranes would strain to lift them. Blocks carved with impossible precision, curved, angled, and interlocked so tightly that not even a sheet of paper can fit between them. This place is called Sacsayhuaman, and it remains one of the most enduring mysteries of the ancient world. At first glance, Sacsayhuaman seems like a fortress. The Spaniards who arrived in the 16th century believed it was built for war, a citadel of defense for the Inca Empire. But the Inca themselves said something different. They said the site was ancient even to them, that it had stood for ages before their empire ever existed. They called it the House of the Sun, a sacred place built by gods, not men. The Inca were master builders, that much we know. Their stonework across Peru is extraordinary. But Sacsayhuaman is different. It's larger, older, and far more complex than anything else they built. The largest stones weigh more than 300 tons, yet they were carved and placed with such artistry that each stone locks into its neighbor like the pieces of a 3D puzzle. No mortar, no cement, just gravity and perfection. The stones themselves are a kind of living geometry. Each one is unique, some with 12, 14, even 20 sides. And every side aligns flawlessly with the stones around it. You can't slide a knife blade into the gaps. Earthquakes have rocked this region for centuries, toppling buildings, temples, and palaces, but not Sacsayhuaman. Its walls have stood unmoved, as if the earth itself respects their placement. When modern engineers examine the site, they admit it defies explanation. How could such massive stones have been lifted and fitted together at an altitude of over 12,000 feet? Without iron tools, without wheels, without advanced machinery. Even with today's technology, replicating such precision at that scale would be nearly impossible. Yet someone, thousands of years ago, did it. The question is who? According to Inca legends, their ancestors did not build Sacsayhuaman. They inherited it. They spoke of Viracocha, the great god, a bearded man who came from across the sea bringing knowledge and order after a great flood. He and his followers, the Shining Ones, were said to have built the great megalithic sites of Peru before disappearing into the Pacific. When the Spanish chroniclers heard these stories, they dismissed them as myth. But what if they weren't? Archaeologists claim Sacsayhuaman was built by the Inca around the 15th century. But that explanation doesn't match the evidence. The lower levels of the wall, the colossal megaliths, are far older than the upper layers built with smaller stones. You can see the difference in craftsmanship. The lower blocks are cyclopean, perfect, and almost seamless. The upper ones rougher, more primitive. It's as if two civilizations worked on the same site, separated by millennia. One of gods, one of men. Whoever built the original foundation of Sacsayhuaman possessed knowledge far beyond what the Inca or any known pre-Columbian culture had. To cut those stones, they would have needed tools harder than granite. Bronze chisels are the only tools the Inca had, could never have achieved such smooth surfaces. In some blocks, faint circular marks appear, as if the stone had been softened, molded, or even melted into shape. That's not just engineering, that's technology. And here's where the mystery deepens. Across the world, in Egypt, we see similar patterns. Cyclopean masonry with interlocking blocks, earthquake resistance, and an almost fluid appearance, as if the stone had once been pliable. Could these techniques have come from the same lost source, a prehistoric civilization with a mastery of geopolymers, resonance, or energy we no longer understand? Some researchers point to sound, the use of sonic frequencies to move or shape stone. Ancient legends across the Andes speak of priests who could make stones sing and float into place using music or chanting. Impossible? Maybe. But modern science has proven that certain frequencies can make materials vibrate, levitate, and even lose weight under resonance. Could Sacsayhuaman be the fossilized evidence of an acoustic technology we've forgotten? If you look closely at the stones, you notice something else. They're not just functional, they're beautiful. Each block has a sculpted grace, with soft curves and rhythmic flow. The walls twist and ripple like frozen waves. There's an artistry here, a sense of organic design that feels less like construction and more like collaboration between human and earth, as if the builders understood the stone's natural energy and shaped it according to harmony, not domination. And harmony seems to be the key. From above, Sacsayhuaman forms a massive zigzag, 3 long terraced walls, each one following the contours of the mountain. To the Inca, this shape represented the teeth of the puma, their sacred animal of power. Cusco, the ancient capital below, was designed in the shape of that puma, and Sacsayhuaman its fortress head. In other words, the entire city was built as a living symbol, a cosmic map encoded into the landscape. When the Spaniards captured Cusco in 1536, they dismantled much of Sacsayhuaman, using its stones to build their cathedrals, but they couldn't move the largest blocks. Those they left behind, and those are the ones that still stand today, and silent, unbroken, defiant. Beneath the fortress, deep tunnels snake through the earth, some still sealed, others leading to vast chambers where Inca priests once performed ceremonies. Local legends say those tunnels stretch for miles, connecting Sacsayhuaman to the Temple of the Sun in Cusco, and even farther to Lake Titicaca, the mythic birthplace of the gods. Explorers who tried to enter them have vanished, swallowed by the labyrinth of stone. To this day, many remain unexplored, and yet Sacsayhuaman may be only one part of something even bigger. All across the Andes, from Ollantaytambo to Pumapunku, from Machu Picchu to Tiahuanaco, we find the same impossible craftsmanship. Precision stonework, massive blocks, and designs aligned to celestial patterns. Different sites, different cultures, same signature. It's as if an older civilization, the same one hinted at in Egypt and Turkey, once spanned the globe, leaving its fingerprints in stone. Mainstream archaeology insists there's no evidence of such a global civilization, but perhaps the evidence is right in front of us, written not in text but in technique. Because technique doesn't lie. It's the universal language of builders. And when we see the same engineering principles appear across continents, the same earthquake-resistant walls, the same geometric perfection, the same astronomical precision, we're left with two options: coincidence or connection. The people of the Andes say Sacsayhuaman is alive, that the stones breathe, that if you press your ear to the walls you can hear the heartbeat of the earth. Standing there, it's easy to believe them. The wind hums across the ridges like a voice too ancient for language. The air feels charged, electric, as if the stones remember something. Something vast, something sacred. Perhaps Sacsayhuaman isn't a fortress at all. Perhaps it's a transmitter, a resonant structure built to channel the natural energies of the earth. The Isi Incas called the planet Pachamama, Mother Earth, and believed she had arteries of energy running through her, called psyches. Sacsayhuaman sat directly on one of these psyches, the largest. What if its zigzag walls weren't for defense but for distribution? What if it was part of a planetary grid, a system of energy that once connected sacred sites across the globe? Today, modern researchers studying ley lines, invisible alignments linking ancient monuments, have found that Sacsayhuaman, the Giza Pyramid, and Göbekli Tepe fall along intersecting energetic paths that correspond to Earth's magnetic fields. It's as if the ancients knew not only where to build, but why to build there. They didn't just choose random mountains or valleys. They chose nodes, power points, where the planet itself hummed with resonance. So maybe Sacsayhuaman was never meant to be understood by sight alone. Maybe it was meant to be felt, through vibration, through energy, through connection to the living earth. And maybe that's the secret the ancients guarded, that humanity once lived in alignment with the planet, and when that harmony was lost, so was the knowledge that built wonders like this. As the sun sets over the Andes, the light spills across the stones, turning them gold. The shadows deepen between their seams, and for a moment it looks as if the walls are alive again, pulsing, breathing, remembering. In that moment you understand, Sacsayhuaman is not a ruin. It's a survivor. A message carved in mountain language, a riddle written in granite, and like the pyramids and Göbekli Tepe before it, it whispers the same question: who were we? Before we forgot, far south of Sacsayhuaman, on the shores of a sacred lake where legends say the gods first walked the earth, lies another mystery, one that may hold the oldest ruins in the Americas. There, half buried in silence and myth, stands a city carved with impossible precision, its stones fitted like puzzle pieces of the gods. In the next chapter, we travel to Lake Titicaca to uncover the enigma of Tiwanaku and Pumapunku, the twin cities that may rewrite human history once again. At 13,000 feet above sea level, where the air thins and the clouds graze the mountains, the world grows quiet. The winds that move across Lake Titicaca carry a chill that feels older than time. And on its southern shore, half buried in earth and legend, lies a city that seems to have been broken by the hand of a god. They call it Tiwanaku, and beside it, Pumapunku, the door of the puma. To stand here is to stand among fragments of a vanished civilization, stones scattered like fallen stars, carved with a precision that still mocks the modern mind. The city above the clouds, Tiwanaku, was once the heart of an empire that stretched across the Andes long before the Inca. Its people cultivated the high plain, drew water through floating gardens, and built temples aligned to the solstice sun. Yet when the Spanish arrived in the 1500s, the locals said the city was already ancient, so ancient that even their gods had forgotten it. They spoke of Viracocha, the great creator who rose from Lake Titicaca after a world-ending flood. From here, he formed the first people from stone and taught them how to build. Then he walked west, promising to return. In those stories, Tiwanaku was not merely a city. It was the navel of the world, the place where creation began. The stones that shouldn't exist walk among the ruins, and you see blocks of andesite and red sandstone weighing between 100 and 800 tons, cut, drilled and interlocked like pieces of a machine. The most famous are the H-blocks of Puma Punku, each identical, each carved with perfect right angles, grooves and channels. When engineers measured them, they found tolerances of less than half a millimeter. In granite, at 13,000 feet, without steel, the precision is so exact that some of the blocks could only have been cut with machine-grade tools. Yet official archaeology dates the site to around 500 AD, when the Tiwanaku people supposedly possessed only stone hammers and bronze chisels. How then did they produce engineering accuracy that rivals aerospace manufacturing? Some believe the answer lies not in chisels, but in lost technology, perhaps an ancient technique for softening stone. Researchers have found microscopic evidence that certain surfaces were vitrified, melted at temperatures beyond any primitive furnace. Others point to chemical weathering that suggests a process more like casting than carving, as if the builders had liquefied the rock and poured it into molds. If true, Puma Punku would be the world's oldest concrete factory, a megalithic workshop of a civilization whose science has vanished completely. Geometry of the gods. But the mystery is not only technological, it's geometric. Every structure at Tiwanaku aligns with astronomical precision. The Kalasasaya temple functions as a solar calendar. Its gateposts mark the rising and setting sun on the equinoxes, and its walls measure the year to within a single day. The Gateway of the Sun, a monolithic doorway carved from one 10-ton slab, bears a calendar of 290 glyphs, a complete solar-lunar cycle encoded in stone. To the casual eye, it's decoration. To those who can read it, it's data, mathematical, astronomical, cosmological. The Tiwanaku builders weren't worshipping the sky. They were mapping it. Even stranger, the site sits on the 41st parallel south, along a line that connects other ancient monuments, Easter Island, Nazca, and certain Polynesian ruins. Plot them on a globe, and they form part of a geometric network. A planetary grid so consistent it feels intentional. Coincidence or design? Cataclysm in stone, yet the city lies in ruins, not eroded by time but shattered, as if struck by unimaginable force. The megaliths of Puma Punku are not toppled. They're exploded. Blocks of hundreds of tons lie scattered like toys, as if some cosmic blast ripped the city apart. Local legend says the destruction came in a single night, fire from the sky, thunder without rain, followed by darkness and flood. Geological studies show evidence of sudden upheaval, sediment layers mixed with marine fossils, suggesting that at some point this high plain was submerged beneath water. If true, then Puma Punku predates the last major shift of Earth's crust, possibly more than 12,000 years ago. At the end of the last ice age, that places its origin in the same epoch as Göbekli Tepe and the earliest Egyptian monuments. Different continents, same time frame, the same whispers of a forgotten world erased by catastrophe. Echoes of an older blueprint. Look closely at the architecture of Tiwanaku. You'll see something hauntingly familiar. Trapezoidal doorways, interlocking polygonal stones, precision joins that resist earthquakes. The same design appears in Cusco in Egypt and Malta in Japan. It's as if every ancient builder followed one blueprint, a global language of sacred engineering. The ancients themselves hinted at it. They said their ancestors received instructions from the gods, from sky people, who descended in radiant light. The Aymara people still perform rituals to summon those beings at the winter solstice. They call them the architects of the dawn. Skeptics dismiss this as myth, a poetic retelling of tribal memories. But what if those myths preserve history? The memory of contact with a lost culture so advanced it appeared divine. A culture that traveled the world long before recorded time, teaching geometry, astronomy, and the art of building in harmony with the earth. The mathematics of memory. When archaeologists mapped Tiwanaku's layout, they discovered a hidden code. The entire complex follows ratios of 1, 2, and p, the same constants embedded in the Great Pyramid. Even the spacing between pillars reflects harmonic intervals used in music. It's as if the city itself was tuned, a frozen symphony of numbers. In the Andean worldview, sound was sacred. They believed the universe vibrated with living energy called kalpa. Temples were not just places of worship, they were resonators, machines designed to amplify that energy. The niches and recesses carved into the walls weren't for decoration. They were tuning cavities. When priests chanted, the entire structure would hum, sending vibration through stone, air, and body. Modern acoustical tests confirm that certain frequencies cause the stones of Pumapunku to resonate audibly. The site literally sings. Could this have been the purpose of all these megaliths, from Egypt to Peru, to generate resonance, to connect the human spirit to the frequency of the planet itself? The hidden timeline radiocarbon dating of organic material around Tiwanaku suggests occupation as early as $15,000 BC, long before agriculture reached the Andes. That pushes its origins into the same lost horizon hinted at across the globe, a forgotten epoch when humanity supposedly still lived in caves. If true, the official history of civilization collapses. It means advanced architecture and astronomical science existed before the known birth of writing, cities, and kings. It means that we are not the pinnacle of progress. We are the survivors of something greater. The legacy of Viracocha. Every year during the June solstice, descendants of the Aymara gather at Tiwanaku. As the first ray of sunlight passes through the temple's eastern gate, they lift their hands to greet Viracocha. They still wait for his return. They still believe that the gods will come back the way they left, by light, by sound, by the sky. Perhaps that's the truest legacy of these ruins. Not their engineering, but their memory. A memory encoded not in books but in stone, because stone endures when stories fade. And maybe that was the intention all along, to build messages that could survive fire, flood, and forgetting. As the wind sweeps across the Altiplano, it howls through the hollows of the H-blocks, producing a deep, low tone, like the breath of the mountain itself. The same sound, perhaps, that the priests once used to open their ceremonies. The same frequency that might have shaken the heart of the earth. Stand there long enough and you feel it, a hum in your bones, a vibration that transcends language. It's as though the stones are not ruins at all, but instruments, still waiting to be played. A message across time. What if Tiwanaku and Pumapunku are not relics of a primitive past, but reminders of a future once lost? What if every megalithic site on Earth is a page from the same manual? A guide to reconnect humanity with the frequencies that sustain life. Maybe that's why these places still draw us, even after thousands of years. We don't just see stones, we feel alignment, a resonance between our bodies and the planet. It's instinct, buried deep in collective memory. The builders knew it. We've only forgotten the language. Far below these windswept plains, carved into another hemisphere, lies a network of lines so vast they can only be seen from the sky. Thousands of geometric figures etched into desert rock, not for eyes on the ground, but for something looking down from above. In the next chapter, we follow those lines into the Peruvian desert to confront one of the most confounding enigmas ever drawn on Earth. The Nazca Lines, messages to the gods, or maps for those who came from the stars. The Nazca Lines, messages to the sky. In the heart of southern Peru lies a desert so dry that nothing grows, nothing rots, and almost nothing changes. For millennia, wind and time have brushed across its red surface, a vast plain of dust and silence. And yet from above something extraordinary appears, perfect geometric figures stretching across the land, lines as straight as laser beams, shapes so vast that they can only be seen from the sky. This is the Nazca Desert, home to one of the most enduring mysteries on Earth, the Nazca Lines. Hundreds of them, no, thousands, etched into the arid crust over an area of nearly 200 square miles. From the ground they seem meaningless, shallow grooves in lifeless dirt. But from above they form an astonishing sight. Spirals, trapezoids, animals, and humanoid figures so precise that they could have been drawn with rulers the size of mountains. The desert becomes a gallery. A monkey with a curling tail stretching 300 feet. A hummingbird with wings longer than a jet. A spider drawn with anatomical perfection, including a detail so small that it can't even be seen without magnification. A tiny stylus on one of its legs, exactly where the reproductive organ of that species exists, a detail unknown to modern science until the invention of microscopes. Yet the Nazca knew. And then there's the astronaut, a figure with large eyes, one arm raised to the sky, carved into the slope of a hill, as if waving to someone above. Was it a god, a myth, or a memory of something that once descended from the heavens? The desert that became a map to the people who lived here, the Nazca civilization, which thrived between 200 BC and 600 AD. This was sacred ground. The desert was not empty to them. It was alive, humming with unseen energy. They called it Pacha, the living earth. And for reasons still unknown, they chose this desolation as their canvas. But the question remains, why draw what you can't see? Why carve enormous figures into the desert floor when no one on the ground could appreciate them? For decades, archaeologists have debated the answer. Some say the lines were ritual pathways, walked during ceremonies to honor the gods of water and fertility. Others claim they were astronomical calendars, mapping the solstices, planetary movements, or constellations. But neither theory fully explains the precision nor the sheer scale. The longest lines stretch for more than 10 miles, dead straight across uneven terrain, hills, valleys, and plains, yet they never deviate, not even slightly. No compass, no aerial view, no modern surveying tools. How did they achieve this? The Nazca made the lines by removing the reddish pebbles that cover the desert, revealing the lighter soil beneath. In theory, anyone could do it, but in practice it requires geometry, perspective, and planning on a massive scale. You'd need to coordinate hundreds of workers across miles of distance without seeing the final result. It would be like drawing a cathedral from inside one brick. And yet they did. The view from above the lines remained hidden to human eyes until 1927, when Peruvian archaeologist Toribio Mejia Gespe noticed them from nearby foothills. But it wasn't until the 1930s, when commercial planes began flying over Nazca, that the world finally saw them in their entirety. From the sky they were breathtaking, as if the desert had been inscribed by giants. The discovery baffled everyone. Why build something that can only be seen from above? In an age before flight? That question gave rise to one of the most controversial theories in archaeology. Popularized in the 1960s, by Swiss writer Erich von Däniken. He suggested the Nazca lines were landing markers for extraterrestrial visitors, a vast spaceport for gods who came from the stars. To the scientific establishment, it sounded absurd, but the images themselves, the humanoid figures, the long straight runways, the precision of the geometry, seemed to whisper something else. That perhaps the Nazca weren't just drawing for the heavens, they were communicating with them. The language of geometry. Let's look closer. Many of the lines form geometric patterns, triangles, trapezoids, and spirals that appear random until you map them on a larger scale. Then a pattern emerges. The lines converge on focal points, like rays of light meeting at a lens. These intersections often align with celestial events, the rising of specific stars, the solstices, and the zenith of the sun. To the Nazca, these alignments were sacred. They weren't art. They were equations in motion, written across the earth to mirror the sky. Some researchers believe the lines were designed as energy channels, geoglyphs marking places where electromagnetic currents or telluric fields converged. Modern measurements show fluctuations in magnetic intensity across certain lines, suggesting the Nazca may have mapped Earth's invisible power long before we had instruments to detect it. In other words, the desert might have been a giant energetic circuit, designed to connect human ritual with planetary force. And perhaps that's why they made them so large, so that the gods, the stars, or whatever intelligence they believed watched from above, could read their messages. The water and the sky, but another mystery runs deeper. The Nazca lived in one of the driest places on Earth. Rain almost never falls here. Yet their survival depended on water. Some researchers discovered that many of the lines point directly to underground aquifers, natural sources of groundwater hidden beneath the desert. The lines, then, could have been both practical and spiritual, maps guiding pilgrims to sacred wells. In that sense, the drawings of animals, the hummingbird, monkey, and condor, may represent fertility and rain. The Nazca might have been calling upon nature itself to sustain them, yet others argue that the Nazca weren't just mapping the Earth's water, but its heavens. The condor's wings align with the constellation Cygnus, the celestial bird. The spider points to Orion. The monkey's tail traces the arc of Ursa Major. Each one a star map. Each one a reflection of the cosmos. As above, so below. It's the same principle we've seen at Göbekli Tepe at Giza, Tiwanaku, a recurring obsession with mirroring heaven on earth. Could all these monuments, separated by oceans and time, be fragments of one ancient worldview? A memory of a time when the sky itself was a teacher, and humanity built to honor what came from it. The people of the lines, what kind of mind conceived of something so vast, so abstract, yet so meaningful? The Nazca people were not empire builders or conquerors. They left no written language, no grand palaces. Their art was woven into cloth, painted on pottery, and carved into earth. Everything they did seemed devoted to connection between man and nature, between ground and sky. Their priests likely walked the lines barefoot, carrying offerings of shells and gold, chanting to the heavens as the stars mirrored their paths. Imagine that moment. Hundreds of people walking a line so straight it disappears into infinity, beneath a sky untouched by light pollution, the Milky Way stretching from horizon to horizon. To them, this wasn't a mystery, it was communion, the collapse and the silence. But then suddenly the Nazca vanished. Sometime around 600 AD, their civilization collapsed. Archaeologists blame droughts and environmental degradation. But some evidence suggests something more violent: massive flooding, earthquakes, or even volcanic eruptions. Whatever happened, the lines remained, preserved by the desert's perfect stillness. Like a message written not to be read, but to wait. Over 1,000 years later, the desert still waits. Planes still fly over it. Satellites still map it. but no one can say with certainty why it was made. We can measure, date, and theorize, but the intention, the true voice of the builders, remains silent. Maybe that's the point. Maybe the Nazca lines were not meant to be explained, but experienced. A ritual for the senses, not the intellect. To stand among them is to feel both tiny and infinite, human yet cosmic. It reminds us that once long ago, people who had nothing, no machines, no wealth, no technology, still looked at the same stars we do and felt compelled to speak to them. And somehow they did. They carved their questions, their prayers, their hope into the bones of the earth. And the earth answered by keeping them alive for 2,000 years, the echo of the unknown somewhere in that desert. There are still undiscovered lines, hidden beneath sand, visible only by drone or satellite. Each new discovery deepens the riddle, as if the desert is slowly revealing its secrets in stages. As if the lines are not just messages to the gods, but messages to us, to remember that we once looked up, not down. Perhaps the Nazca weren't trying to summon something from the stars. Perhaps they were trying to send something back. Gratitude, memory, recognition to the place we all came from. And maybe that's why the astronaut figure stands apart, waving, not as a god but as a mirror, as if to say, you are the ones we were waiting for. As night falls over the desert, the air cools. The lines fade into shadow, invisible once more to the human eye. Only the stars can see them now. And perhaps that's how it was always meant to be. But across the Atlantic in another desert, one older, more haunting, the same question rises again. Carved into cliffs and pyramids, buried beneath sand and stone, are symbols that tell a story even the pharaohs couldn't erase. In the next chapter, we return to Egypt, not to Giza, but deep beneath it, into tunnels, chambers, and forbidden rooms that may hold the keys to the forgotten past. Prepare to enter the Osirian of Abydos, the structure that should not exist and yet does. The Osirian of Abydos, the temple that time forgot in the heart of Egypt, where the Nile curves like a vein of time itself, lies a temple complex older than memory. To the ancient Egyptians, this place was sacred beyond comprehension. It was called Abydos, the burial site of kings, the gateway to the underworld, and the dwelling place of the god of resurrection, Osiris. But beneath its sand-choked ruins, hidden for thousands of years, lies something far older. A structure so ancient, so unlike anything else in Egypt, that even the pharaohs didn't understand it. They called it the Osirian, the Temple of Osiris. But perhaps it wasn't built for Osiris. Perhaps it was built before him. The discovery in 1902, British archaeologists Flinders Petrie and Margaret Murray were excavating the Temple of Seti the Fan, a majestic monument of the 19th dynasty. While clearing sand from the temple's rear, they stumbled upon something extraordinary. A deep pit in the desert floor. And within it, massive granite pillars rising from underground water. At first, they thought they had found a foundation chamber or a royal tomb, but as they descended, they realized this was something else entirely. A temple buried beneath another temple. One older, one darker, one built from stones the size of buses, weighing over 100 tons each. The style was nothing like Seti's refined, decorated architecture. No delicate hieroglyphs, no painted reliefs, no ornamentation. Only raw power, colossal granite blocks fitted with cyclopean precision. The walls were made from red Aswan granite, harder than steel, and joined so tightly that even a modern razor blade couldn't slip between them. This wasn't the work of the 19th dynasty. It was something primeval. And here lies the first mystery. The Osirian is built lower than the surrounding temple, so low that the water table constantly floods its chambers. No Egyptian architect would ever do that intentionally. Every other temple in Egypt was built above ground, aligned to the sun and the stars, but this was dug deep into the earth like a memory being buried. It's as if Seti discovered it and then built his temple above it to honor what he found. The architecture that shouldn't exist when you stand inside the Osirian. You feel small, not just physically but temporally. The air is heavy with silence. The walls are immense, monolithic, radiating the same ancient gravity as the Great Pyramid itself. No mortar, no seams, just blocks locked together as though they grew from the ground. This isn't typical Egyptian architecture. It's megalithic, like Sacsay Huaman, like Puma Punku, like Baalbek. A style that doesn't belong to the Bronze Age, but to something older, something that understood how to work with stone as if it were clay. The granite pillars of the Osirian are perfectly square, yet their surfaces are subtly convex, a trick used to make them appear perfectly flat to the human eye. That level of optical correction is something we associate with modern engineering, not 4,000 years ago. Each pillar is placed with mathematical precision in a symmetrical grid, 11 by 14, creating a resonance pattern almost like a harmonic field. It's as if the entire structure was tuned. A temple not for worship, but for vibration, for energy, for resurrection. The temple of the gods, or of the gods before. Mainstream archaeology says the Osirian was built during Seti's reign, around 3,200 years ago. But that explanation collapses under scrutiny. Seti's temple is made from sandstone, the Osirian from granite and quartzite. Different tools, different methods, different eras. Even the inscriptions tell a strange story. On the walls of Seti's temple, hieroglyphs depict him discovering the Osirian, not constructing it. He describes it as the House of Osiris, built in the first time, the Zep Tepi, the mythical age when the gods themselves ruled Egypt. According to legend, this was when Thoth, the god of wisdom, taught humanity the arts of writing, mathematics, and architecture. And when Osiris brought resurrection to the soul, could the Osirian be a survivor from that forgotten age, a relic of a civilization that predated Egypt itself? The symbol of life. After death, when researchers mapped the Osirian's interior, they discovered its layout mirrored a symbol deeply sacred to the Egyptians, the Ankh, the key of life. The central hall forms the loop, the corridors the stem, and the side chambers the arms. To the Egyptians, the Ankh represented eternal life, not just physical but spiritual, the power to transcend death. This connection raises an eerie possibility. What if the Osirian wasn't just symbolic? What if it was built as a literal machine of rebirth, a chamber designed to amplify energy, sound, and consciousness? Ancient Egyptian priests believed that sound could open gateways to the afterlife. The chants they performed were not songs, they were frequencies, and granite rich in quartz resonates powerfully with sound. In modern labs, scientists have found that granite can amplify acoustic energy by 400%. In the Osirian, where sound echoes endlessly off stone and water, it's easy to imagine rituals that used vibration itself to simulate resurrection or transformation. The water and the underworld water constantly seeps into the Osirian's base, forming a shallow pool that never dries. At first glance, this seems like a flaw, but what if it was intentional? In Egyptian cosmology, water represented Nun, the primordial ocean of creation. All life and all gods emerged from Nun. To descend into the Osirian, down into its flooded chamber, was to symbolically return to that ocean, to the womb of the universe, and be reborn. This fits perfectly with the myth of Osiris, who was drowned, dismembered, and resurrected by Isis. The priests who entered this place were not simply worshippers, they were initiates, undergoing the death and rebirth of the god himself. Some researchers suggest the Osirian may have been part of a vast initiation complex, where high priests or pharaohs underwent a sacred journey, physical, mental and spiritual, to awaken the divine within. Each vibration of the granite pillars, each reflection on the water, each step downward, designed to simulate the soul's descent into the afterlife and its resurrection into eternal consciousness. The hidden inscriptions, when modern archaeologists cleaned the walls, they found something that deepened the mystery even further. Two massive circular carvings, perfect spirals known as the flower of life pattern. This symbol, found in dozens of ancient cultures, represents sacred geometry, the mathematical fabric of creation itself. But here's the anomaly. The carvings were not etched into plaster or paint. They were burned into the granite, as if made by heat or laser. No chisel marks, no tool scratches, just smooth impressions, melted into the hardest stone in Egypt. Who carved them? When and with what? No hieroglyph identifies their maker. No record explains their presence. It's as though the Osirian itself was branded by a knowledge beyond human hands, or beyond our timeline. The sound of the stones in 1996. A team of acoustical engineers entered the Osirian to study its resonance. They discovered something astonishing. When they emitted low-frequency tones between 90 and 110 Hz, the chamber vibrated. The granite pillars began to hum. The water rippled in synchrony. And the researchers reported feeling physical changes. Tingling skin, altered breathing, even brief disorientation. The temple, it seemed, was designed to interact with human consciousness. Ancient Egyptian texts spoke of temples that speak. Could the Osirian have been one of them? A resonant chamber where sound and perhaps intention shaped reality itself. If true, then the Osirian wasn't built merely for ritual. It was built for transformation. A machine of frequency and form. A bridge between the mortal and the divine. The timeline that doesn't fit. If the Osirian truly predates Seti I, how far back does it go? Some geologists believe erosion patterns on its granite blocks indicate exposure to heavy rainfall, something that hasn't occurred in Egypt for at least 10,000 years. That would place its construction at the end of the last ice age, the same epoch as Göbekli Tepe and Tiwanaku. Once again, the same pattern emerges. Massive megaliths, advanced engineering, perfect geometry, all from a world that, according to history, shouldn't have existed. Could the builders of the Osirian have been survivors of a forgotten civilization, the same architects who encoded their wisdom in stone across the planet? And could the myths of Osiris, Thoth, and the Zep Tepi be echoes of that lost world remembered in symbolic form? The deeper you dig into the Osirian, the more it refuses to be ancient Egyptian. It feels older, alien in the truest sense of the word, other. A living mystery today, the Osirian remains flooded, its chambers half submerged. Tourists rarely see it. Most walk through Seti's temple above, unaware that beneath their feet lies a monument that may predate Egypt itself, a temple of stone and sound, of life and death, of knowledge that whispers through water. If you stand at its edge at sunset, the last light strikes the granite pillars and turns them gold. The water reflects their image, doubling them as above, so below. In that reflection, time collapses. Pharaohs fade, gods return. And for a moment, the Osirian feels alive again, pulsing with the energy it once held, waiting for those who can still hear its frequency. But the story doesn't end in Egypt's sands, because far across the world, another megalithic mystery stands, this time beneath the waves. A submerged staircase carved into stone, stretching out into the deep ocean. Some say it's Atlantis, others, the ruins of a civilization drowned before history began. Next, we dive beneath the Pacific to uncover Yonaguni, Japan's sunken pyramid, and ask, what happens when the sea itself guards humanity's oldest memory? Yonaguni, the sunken pyramid beneath the Pacific, off the coast of Japan's southernmost island, where coral reefs fade into endless blue, the sea hides a secret. Fishermen have sailed these waters for centuries. The currents are treacherous, the depths unpredictable. But in 1986, one diver stumbled upon something that would rewrite the map of human history, or at least force us to question everything we thought we knew about it. The diver's name was Kihachiro Aratake. He was exploring the seabed near Yonaguni Island, searching for new spots to attract tourists. But as he descended into the clear Pacific, something caught his eye. A massive structure rising from the ocean floor. It wasn't coral. It wasn't natural. It was stone, tiered, straight-edged, monumental. At first he thought it was a temple, then a fortress. But the deeper he swam, the more it revealed itself. A pyramid, carved into the bedrock, stretching over 150 meters long and 25 meters high. It wasn't sitting on the seabed, it was the seabed, an entire mountain sculpted by hands older than memory. Aratake had found what many now call the Yonaguni Monument, a submerged city, some say, built thousands of years before the pyramids of Egypt ever touched the sky. The discovery beneath the waves. The monument lies just 20 meters below the surface, a labyrinth of terraces, platforms, staircases, and flat roads that seem designed for giants. Divers describe it as eerie, almost otherworldly. The light shifts through the water, throwing moving shadows across the stone like ghosts of the past. Each corner, each step seems intentional, too straight, too aligned to be nature's chaos. Marine geologist Masaki Kimura, one of the first scientists to investigate the site, made a bold claim. He believed Yonaguni wasn't a random formation at all. It was man-made, and not just ancient. Prehistoric Kimura's surveys revealed that the monument wasn't isolated. Around it lay roads, stone circles, and structures resembling castles and amphitheaters. He even identified what looked like massive carvings of faces, weathered but still visible, their features hauntingly human. To Kimura, this was evidence of a lost city, one that sank after the last ice age, more than 10,000 years ago. If true, that would make Yonaguni the oldest known structure ever built. Older than Göbekli Tepe, older than Sumer, older than civilization itself. The architecture of the abyss from above. The monument resembles a stepped pyramid, like those of the Mayans or Egyptians, but submerged and silent. Its terraces are perfect rectangles, each one precisely leveled, stacked one atop another like pages in a book. Long linear ridges run along the sides, forming corridors and platforms. At one end, a broad staircase rises, or rather descends, into a central courtyard. Some divers call it the Grand Staircase, others the stage. What's most striking are the angles, 90-degree cuts, parallel walls, and geometric alignment that defy natural erosion. The edges are sharp, the steps uniform. This is not how nature sculpts. This is how engineers think. Kimura's team mapped the site using sonar and photogrammetry, revealing an astonishing pattern. The structure's alignment mirrors both true north and certain astronomical positions, as if it had once been oriented to the stars. He also found a megalith shaped like a turtle, positioned precisely where the constellation Draco rises during the spring equinox, a symbol sacred in ancient Japanese myth. Coincidence, some say. But patterns like these don't repeat by chance. They suggest intention, design, knowledge, nature or civilization. Of course, not everyone agrees. Many geologists insist Yonaguni is entirely natural, a product of tectonic shifts and sedimentary fracture. They argue that the sandstone layers in the region naturally break into rectangular blocks under pressure, forming what's called jointing. In other words, the monument is just a geological accident, an illusion of architecture. But if that's true, why does it contain carved stairways, roads, and portals that align with ancient shoreline levels? Why do its terraces appear to follow a mathematical ratio, the same 1.2 proportion seen in ancient temples worldwide? And why, at the base of one platform, did Kimura's team find tool marks, parallel grooves etched into the stone, perfectly straight, like cuts from chisels or saws. Even more mysteriously, nearby divers discovered stone anchors and ceramic fragments buried in the seabed, artifacts dated to between 4,000 and 10,000 years old. That means humans were active here long before the sea rose to cover it. So the question isn't whether people were here, it's how long ago they built this. The drowned world during the last ice age, sea levels were much lower, over 100 meters lower than today. At that time, Yonaguni was part of a vast coastal plain that connected Japan, Taiwan, and mainland Asia. When the ice melted around 10,000 BCE, that plain vanished beneath the rising ocean. If the monument was built before that flood, it would belong to a civilization from the Pleistocene epoch, a civilization we don't even acknowledge existed. Could Yonaguni be a remnant of the world that inspired the legend of Atlantis, the lost island described by Plato, said to have sunk in a single day and night of misfortune? Many researchers believe so. Plato's timeline for Atlantis, around 9600 BCE, matches the end of the Ice Age almost perfectly. And his description, a highly advanced maritime civilization destroyed by floods, echoes eerily with what might have happened here. But perhaps Atlantis was not one place at all. Perhaps it was a memory, a collective echo of many coastal civilizations erased by rising seas. And Yonaguni may be one of their tombs. The language of stone. When divers study the monument up close, they notice something peculiar. The surfaces aren't rough or jagged, they're smooth as if polished. The steps maintain a constant height, about 1 meter each, consistent across vast sections. That uniformity suggests engineering, a standard of measurement. And where nature might crumble, Yonaguni's edges remain crisp, almost preserved as if sealed by the sea itself. Some sections show circular holes bored into the rock, too regular to be natural. Others contain narrow passageways, door-like openings, and what appears to be an altar, a raised flat platform surrounded by cut channels, perhaps for water or ritual purposes. Divers describe an uncanny feeling, like walking through a city frozen mid-breath, suspended in the moment it was swallowed by the ocean. And if that sounds impossible, remember, beneath the Black Sea, beneath India's Gulf of Cambay, and beneath Cuba's western coast, similar underwater ruins have been found, all dating back to the same vanished era. The sea, it seems, is not empty. It's archive. The spirit of the Sea King's Japanese myth speaks of Ryugujo, the palace of the dragon god, said to lie beneath the ocean, a city of crystal walls and eternal time. Fishermen told tales of being drawn into its depths, meeting gods who ruled over tides and weather. To most, it was legend, but to the people of Yonaguni, it was memory. Could these myths preserve the story of a real place, one that once stood on dry land before being claimed by the sea? If so, Yonaguni isn't just a ruin. It's a monument to human endurance, the last echo of a civilization swallowed by rising waters, a warning perhaps written in stone and hidden under waves. Kimura believed the builders of Yonaguni might have been the ancestors of Japan's Jomon culture, one of the world's oldest continuous civilizations. The Jomon were known for their intricate pottery, maritime skills, and mysterious stone circles. But their origins have always been a puzzle. Could they have inherited their knowledge from this drowned city, the way Egyptians inherited the Assyrian, or the Inca inherited Sacsayhuaman? Everywhere we look, we see the same story repeating. Younger cultures building upon the ruins of older, greater ones, civilizations layered like sediment, each one forgetting a little more of what came before. The deep silence today, the monument rests in cold stillness. Fish weave through its corridors, coral blooms on its steps, and yet it endures, untouched by storms, earthquakes, or time. The sea, in its own strange way, has preserved it. When divers descend, they describe the same sensation, awe mixed with melancholy. It feels less like discovery and more like intrusion. Like stepping into a sacred place, not meant to be seen again. At certain times of day, when the sun is high and the water clear, light pierces through the surface and illuminates the monument's terraces. For a few brief moments, the pyramid glows golden, as if awakening. Then the light fades and the city returns to shadow, asleep once more beneath the sea, the echo of a forgotten world. What if Yonaguni is not an anomaly, but a clue? A reminder that history is cyclical, that civilizations rise, fall, and rise again. We imagine progress as a straight line, but the stones beneath Yonaguni whisper a different story, one of memory, loss, and rediscovery. Perhaps this isn't the first time humans reach technological or spiritual heights. Perhaps it's the second or the third. And the ocean floor is littered with the evidence. The ancients spoke of a great flood that ended the First Age. The Sumerians, the Egyptians, the Mayans, even the Japanese. Different languages, same memory. A global cataclysm that erased almost everything. Almost. What if Yonaguni and others like it are the remnants of that forgotten world, waiting patiently for us to remember? As the currents shift over the monument, it stands immovable, the ocean's secret cathedral. No plaque, no inscription, no name, just stone and silence, speaking a truth too old for words. Beneath the endless blue, the last light of day fades. And somewhere in that twilight, among the coral and sand, you can almost hear it. A low hum like a heartbeat echoing through time. The sound of a civilization that refused to vanish completely. The sound of memory itself. But what if the sea is not the only place where time hides its secrets? What if beneath our feet, under mountains, jungles, and deserts, lie entire networks carved by hands that predate history? In the next chapter, we travel to Turkey once more to descend into the earth, through corridors, chambers, and tunnels that stretch for miles. A city carved underground, built to withstand catastrophe, and perhaps to survive the end of the world. Prepare to enter Derinkuyu, the lost underground city. Derinkuyu, the lost underground city beneath the rolling plains of central Turkey, where the land looks ordinary and silent. An entire world sleeps below the surface. A labyrinth carved not by nature, but by human hands. A city so vast that it stretches through multiple levels of rock, descending hundreds of feet underground. A city that once housed tens of thousands of people, with homes, schools, stables, and temples, all carved from solid stone. No light, no air, no sound from above, only darkness and mystery. This is Derinkuyu, one of the greatest enigmas ever found beneath the earth. The accidental discovery. The year was 1963. A man in the small town of Derinkuyu was renovating his house, knocking down a wall to expand his cellar. Behind it, he found a hollow space. He pushed further, and his hammer disappeared into a dark hole. Curious, he brought a lamp, crawled through, and what he saw changed archaeology forever. The narrow passage opened into a vast chamber, larger than any basement could ever be. And from that chamber, tunnels led in every direction. He followed one, then another, realizing this wasn't just a cave. It was a city, an underground metropolis buried for millennia. When authorities investigated, they were stunned. What began as one hidden room became hundreds. The network extended for miles beneath the town, an entire civilization carved into volcanic rock. A world within a world. Toesimami Tantaka city beneath a city. Derinkuyu isn't just large. It's incomprehensible. Archaeologists estimate that it could have housed over 20,000 people, perhaps even 50,000. The city descends 18 stories deep, nearly 280 feet, making it one of the largest underground structures ever created. It contains tunnels, Kitchens, ventilation shafts, wine presses, wells, schools and chapels, all perfectly engineered to function without sunlight. And here's the astonishing part. Every level is connected by vertical shafts with massive circular stone doors, some weighing over a ton, that could roll shut from the inside. Each level could be sealed off, isolating it completely from those above or below. Whoever built this place wasn't hiding from nature. They were defending themselves against something, but what? Theristinalbiti Madi, the stone that breathes Derinkuyu, was carved from a type of volcanic rock called tuff, soft enough to dig yet strong enough to stand. The region of Cappadocia is riddled with natural caves, but Derinkuyu is different, geometric, symmetrical, deliberate. Its architects weren't just miners, they were engineers. The city's ventilation system alone is a masterpiece. There are over 50 air shafts reaching the surface, some more than 180 feet tall, placed so precisely that even the lowest chambers remain breathable. Air circulates naturally, as if the rock itself were alive, inhaling and exhaling. Even when one entrance was blocked, the system continued to flow. How could an ancient people, with no compasses, no modern tools, design an underground ecosystem this complex? No ancient text describes its construction, no record names its builders. No one even now knows when it was made. Versa di Edifiwa, a refuge for the forgotten. The earliest written mention of underground cities in this region comes from Xenophon, a Greek historian writing in the 4th century BCE. He described houses underground, large enough for entire families and animals, with entrances only wide enough for a single man. But even then, these cities already existed. They were old, ancient even to the ancients. Archaeologists once believed Derinkuyu was built around 800 BCE by the Phrygians, later expanded by early Christians hiding from persecution. But new evidence, including the erosion patterns, the depth and the construction style, suggests it's far older, perhaps 3,000 years old, perhaps 10,000, perhaps prehistoric. So why was it built? Some say it was a fortress, a place of refuge during war. Others a survival bunker, protection against climate catastrophe or invasion. But the deeper you go, the less it feels military. It feels sacred. The architecture of fear and faith. Walking through Derinkuyu, you can feel two emotions coexisting, fear and reverence. The tunnels are narrow, designed to force intruders to enter one at a time. Massive stone doors guard intersections. Every chamber is curved to prevent collapse. Yet at the heart of it, near the lowest levels, lies something unexpected, a temple. A circular chamber carved with perfect acoustics. If one person speaks, the sound travels through the entire level. This wasn't random. It was designed for ritual. Nearby, archaeologists found altars, symbolic niches and cross-shaped engravings. Later Christian additions, yes, but perhaps built atop something older. Older symbols, now eroded, hint at sun discs, spirals and serpent forms. Motifs seen in prehistoric sites worldwide, from Göbekli Tepe to Malta. The same language of stone repeated across continents. Could Derinkuyu have once served not just as a refuge, but as an initiation site, a sacred descent into the womb of the earth? A symbolic death and rebirth, much like the Assyrians' flooded chamber in Egypt. The world below Derinkuyu is not alone. Throughout Cappadocia, there are over 200 known underground cities, many connected by tunnels stretching for miles. They form an entire subterranean network beneath the landscape, one of the largest on Earth. Satellite scans suggest there may be hundreds more, still undiscovered. Some of these tunnels are wide enough for 2 men to walk side by side. Others are barely large enough to crawl through. And the deeper you go, the more advanced the engineering becomes, suggesting that the builders started below and worked upward, not the other way around. That detail has puzzled every expert because it defies logic. How could ancient people have started building from the bottom up, in total darkness, without modern surveying tools? How could they align shafts and chambers across miles of solid rock? And why would they hide underground in the first place? Archaeological due as the cataclysm hypothesis. Some researchers believe the answer lies in catastrophe. Not war, but cosmic disaster. At the end of the last ice age, around 12,800 years ago, something extraordinary happened. The Earth's climate shifted violently. Evidence from Greenland ice cores shows a sudden temperature spike, followed by floods, fires, and mass extinction. Many scientists now attribute this to the Younger Dryas impact, a comet or asteroid that struck the northern hemisphere, unleashing chaos. It would have triggered earthquakes, volcanic ash, and years of darkness. Civilizations, if any existed, would have been forced underground. Could Derinkuyu be one of the refugees built during that time? A survival ark for humanity's first survivors? A place to outlast a sky on fire? This theory fits too neatly to ignore. Derinkuyu's architecture is defensive, yes, but also insulated, sustainable, and hidden. The builders planned not for weeks of shelter, but years. They brought animals, stored food, dug wells, even pressed wine. They didn't just want to hide. They wanted to live. And when the world above became safe again, when the fires ended and the ice melted, they sealed the tunnels and left, carrying their memory into myth. Those to be Zafu Basat and the whisper of the old ones. Local legends say that Derinkuyu wasn't built by humans at all, but by the Shining Ones, beings who came from the stars, or from the first age of man. They were said to live underground, teaching early humans architecture, metallurgy, and astronomy. Every culture has them. The Anunnaki of Mesopotamia, the Apkallu of Sumer, the Shemsu Hor of Egypt. Beings of light who vanish when the floods come, promising to return. To the skeptics, this is mythology. To the dreamers, it's memory, because what we call myth often hides a coded truth. The way legends of a global flood echo real geological events. And maybe the Shining Ones were not gods, but survivors. The last remnants of an advanced culture that descended below ground to preserve its knowledge. In that light, Derinkuyu becomes something different. Not a bunker of fear, but a seed vault for civilization itself. Foistikavaki with the silence of the stone. When you stand at the lowest chamber, you feel it, an almost magnetic stillness. No wind, no echo, just the heartbeat of the earth. In that darkness, it's easy to understand why ancient people saw caves as portals to the underworld. They weren't just hiding from danger. They were entering the womb of the planet, trusting that life could begin again. They weren't just hiding from danger. They were entering the womb of the planet, trusting that life could begin again. Tersi Wandi Skaksia, the temple. Archaeologists may never find the original builders. No artifacts identify them. No hieroglyphs, no tools. Only the walls gang smooth, precise, patient. Like the lines of Nazca, like the stones of Giza, like the blocks of Saksai Huaman. It's as if the earth itself remembers, even when we forget. The legacy of the deep Derinkuyu remained hidden for thousands of years. Generations lived above it, unaware of the world beneath their feet. It waited, perfectly preserved like a message locked in stone. And when it was rediscovered, it reminded us of something profound. That history is not flat. It's layered, like the earth itself. Perhaps beneath every city, beneath every mountain, there are older cities still, waiting for time to peel them open. And maybe somewhere in the depths of Derinkuyu, behind an undiscovered wall, there lies the next doorway. The one that leads not just deeper into the earth, but deeper into our own forgotten past. The descent continues. If you listen closely in those tunnels, the stone almost hums. Sound carries differently underground. Every whisper echoes like a voice from another age. It's easy to imagine torches flickering against the walls, children's laughter in the corridors, prayers rising in the dark, the sound of life when the surface was death. Tirinkuyu isn't just an archaeological site. It's a time capsule, a testament to the human instinct to endure and to remember. We may never know who built it or why, but one truth echoes louder than all the rest. Humanity has been reborn before, and it will be again. But what if there are secrets not buried in earth or sea, but in plain sight, hidden in the stones of temples that still stand? What if ancient builders encoded their knowledge in sacred architecture that points not just to the heavens, but to something beyond them? In the next chapter, we journey to India, where a temple carved from a single mountain stands as proof that ancient technology may not have been lost, only forgotten. Prepare to witness the impossible at Kailasa, the mountain carved by the gods. Kailasa, the mountain carved by the gods in the western heartland of India, where the Deccan Plateau rises like an ancient scar. A mountain once stood, unbroken, untouched, until one day someone began carving. Not to quarry stone, not to build upon it, but to dig into it. To carve a temple not from blocks, but from the living mountain itself. A temple that wasn't constructed, it was liberated, as if it had always been there waiting to be revealed. This is Kailasa, the crown jewel of the Ellora caves, a structure so immense, so mathematically perfect, that even modern engineers admit we couldn't replicate it today. Not easily. Maybe not at all. Sarati or Samsendi, the temple that was freed from stone Kailasa. Temple is not just another monument. It's an act of geological rebellion, carved downward from the top of a mountain into its core. It descends nearly 100 feet into solid basalt, one of the hardest stones on Earth. Every column, every tower, every sculpture you see was excavated from a single rock. There are no seams, no joints, no scaffolding marks, no evidence of assembly. It is quite literally a mountain turned inside out. To understand how impossible that is, imagine carving a cathedral the size of the Parthenon. But instead of building it brick by brick, you start with a solid mountain and remove everything that isn't part of the temple. That's Kailasa. The scale is staggering. Over 200,000 tons of rock were removed, not blasted but precisely cut and hauled away. And that's just for one temple. Ellora as a whole contains 34 rock-cut structures, each adorned with breathtaking detail. But Kailasa dwarfs them all. A two-story temple complex with multiple shrines, carved elephants, staircases, balconies, and pillars, all seamlessly integrated into one monolithic design. It's not architecture, it's revelation. As if some divine hand sculpted the earth itself. Thaikifpidas, during a mystery in time, mainstream archaeology dates Kailasa to the 8th century CE, built under the Rashtrakuta King Krishna I. But that date raises more questions than it answers, because carving a structure of this magnitude, using only hammers, chisels, and primitive tools, would have taken centuries. Yet inscriptions claim it was completed in less than 20 years. How could that be possible? Even if 7,000 laborers worked day and night, removing 10 tons of stone daily, it would still take over 200 years. So either the timeline is wrong, or something or someone else was at work. Ancient legends might hold a clue. According to Hindu texts, the temple was not built by humans at all, but by the divine architect Vishwakarma, the celestial craftsman who forged the weapons of the gods and built their heavenly palaces. The story says that King Krishna's queen once fell gravely ill, and he vowed to build a temple to Lord Shiva if she recovered. When she did, he demanded the temple be finished within his lifetime, an impossible demand. But Vishwakarma appeared in his dreams and promised to complete it in a single night. By dawn, the temple was there, whole, radiant, carved into the living rock. Myth, perhaps? But when you stand before Kailasa, that myth feels less like fantasy and more like memory, the way truth turns to legend when time forgets its context. Orikari Sajas, danga the perfection of the impossible, walk through the entrance, and you enter a world where geometry becomes poetry. Colossal pillars rise from the mountain floor, their surfaces carved with divine battles and celestial dances. Intricate friezes wrap around the walls, depicting the Mahabharata and Ramayana, epics of gods, demons, and cosmic war. And above it all towers Shikhar, the temple's central spire rising 96 feet, carved not separately, but as one with the rock below it. Every sculpture, every ornament maintains perfect proportion. Even the shadows fall symmetrically, as if the builders calculated light itself. When sunlight enters at dawn, it illuminates the sanctum, the inner shrine, at the exact moment of sunrise on certain holy days. That's not coincidence. That's astronomical design. The temple isn't oriented randomly. It's aligned to magnetic north and the cardinal directions, a pattern found in megalithic sites worldwide. Its floor plan forms a mandala, a sacred geometric pattern symbolizing the cosmos. In Hindu cosmology, Kailasa is not just a temple. It's the earthly replica of Mount Kailash, the mythical abode of Lord Shiva, the god of creation and destruction. To carve it from a mountain was to unite heaven and earth, the divine and the material, to bring eternity into form. Dake tools from another age. The question remains, how did they do it? Basalt is one of the toughest volcanic rocks known to man. Even with modern steel tools, carving it requires tremendous effort. But the artisans of Kailasa achieved near laser precision. Surfaces so smooth they reflect light, edges so sharp you could slice paper. Some carvings are so detailed that a modern sculptor with fine drills would struggle to reproduce them. Yet these were supposedly made with iron chisels, which would blunt after only a few strikes. No remnants of scaffolding or waste piles remain nearby. Where did the debris go? 200,000 tons of stone can't just disappear. It's as if the mountain itself consumed its own skin. Some researchers believe the builders used sound-based cutting, the ancient Indian Vajra or Shabda technology mentioned in the Vedas, capable of vibrating stone at specific frequencies until it cracked precisely along desired lines. Others suggest the use of lost metallurgical tools or even heat softening techniques, similar to the mysterious vitrification seen on ancient walls across the world. No matter the theory, the result is the same. The builders of Kailasa possessed knowledge that defies their era. They were not primitive masons. They were engineers of resonance. Toriki Unda Tenzu, echoes of the ancients Kailasa, doesn't stand alone in its mystery. Across the world we see similar monuments, single stone marvels carved into mountains. Petra in Jordan, Lalibela in Ethiopia, Abu Simbel in Egypt, and even the Longmen grottos in China. Each shares a strange connection: advanced stone-cutting techniques, astronomical precision, and inexplicable speed of construction. Could these all be fragments of a lost global tradition, one passed down from a civilization that understood the Earth as an instrument, not just a resource? If so, then Kailasa might be the Indian echo of a much older memory, the same knowledge that shaped the pyramids, the Osirian, and the megaliths of Peru. The design of Kailasa also mirrors sacred geometry found in ancient Egyptian and Greek temples, the golden ratio, phi and pi, embedded within its proportions. Its dimensions resonate with the frequencies of planetary orbits and sound intervals, as if tuned to the same cosmic harmonics that govern life itself. Coincidence? Or continuity? The secret beneath few realize that Kailasa may not end where the eye can see. Local lore speaks of underground tunnels and hidden chambers beneath the temple, sealed long ago, said to contain sacred relics and machines of the gods. Some claim these chambers connect to a subterranean network stretching across India, linking temples, caves, and forgotten sanctuaries. No official excavation has ever confirmed this, but ground-penetrating radar has detected anomalies, hollow zones deep beneath the rock. Whatever lies there remains untouched. Perhaps the ancients understood something we've forgotten, that what is seen above is only half the design, that the true power of sacred sites often lies in the unseen, the resonance between the structure and the earth itself. Of frequencies, modern acoustic engineers who have studied Kailasa's inner sanctum discovered something astonishing. When a single chant is uttered within the main hall, the entire structure vibrates. Every pillar, every wall, every surface resonates as if alive. It's not just sound, it's architecture designed for frequency amplification. In Hindu philosophy, the universe itself was spoken into being through Nada Brahma, the sound of creation. Every syllable of a mantra, when chanted in resonance with sacred geometry, becomes a tool for transformation. Kailasa may have been built not merely as a temple, but as a vibrational gateway, a physical instrument for aligning human consciousness with the divine frequency of the cosmos. It's a symphony of stone. When monks chant within its halls, the air trembles. Visitors report a deep pressure in their chest, like the mountain itself is breathing. For a moment, you forget where you are. You feel like you've stepped inside the heart of the earth, and it's still beating. The legacy of the gods. The more you study Kailasa, the more you sense that it wasn't built for the gods. It was built by them. Not in the literal sense of divine hands, but in the sense of a civilization so advanced, it blurred the line between human and divine. A culture that mastered art, science, and spirituality, not as separate pursuits, but as one unified technology. The same unity we see echoed in Egypt, in Sumer, in the Andes, all pointing to the same truth, that long before our recorded history, there was an age when humanity and the cosmos spoke the same language, and that language was carved into stone. Kailasa endures as a monument to that forgotten era. Not weathered, not buried, but alive, pulsing with the same energy it was designed to embody. It defies time because it was built outside of time, an expression of eternity itself. The mountain that remembers, stand before Kailasa at sunrise. The basalt glows orange, then gold. The air hums with sound, birds, bells, the faint echo of chanting. And as the first light touches the temple's spire, it feels as though the mountain awakens, not just stone, but memory. You begin to realize that Kailasa isn't simply a structure, it's a message. A reminder that human hands once worked in harmony with the forces of the universe, that creation and devotion were once the same act, that the sacred was never built, it was always revealed. The temple has no beginning and no end. It is the earth remembering what it once knew, that divinity doesn't descend from the heavens. It rises from within. But not all temples were carved for light. Some were carved to hold darkness, to keep secrets, not reveal them. Our next journey takes us deep into Europe's underworld, to a site older than Stonehenge, where tunnels spiral into infinity, a labyrinth carved by unknown hands whispering of rituals, sound, and sacrifice. Prepare to descend into Malta's hypogeum, the oracle of the dead. The hypogeum of Malta, the oracle of the dead, off the southern coast of Sicily. In the middle of the Mediterranean Sea lies a small island that holds one of the oldest and strangest mysteries on Earth. Its cliffs rise from blue water like broken bones, wind-worn and ancient. Malta, the land of forgotten gods. Here, beneath a quiet neighborhood in the town of Paola, lies a doorway. A descent into darkness so complete that even light feels afraid to follow. Locals call it Halsaflieni Hypogeum, which means underground place. But what lies beneath is not just an underground place. It's a cathedral carved into living stone more than 6,000 years ago, before the pyramids, before Stonehenge, before writing itself. A place built not for the living, but for the dead. The accidental descent. It was 1902. A construction crew digging foundations for new houses broke through a wall of limestone and into a void. When one worker crawled inside with a lantern, he found himself in a chamber so silent that even his breath sounded sacrilegious. The walls were smooth, curved, polished, not natural. They were carved, like a sculptor's dream. He moved forward and the floor dropped away, steps descending deeper into darkness, 3 levels deep. When archaeologists arrived, they realized what they'd uncovered was beyond comprehension. An entire subterranean complex, temples, tombs, chambers, and passageways, all carved by hand into the bedrock. No metal tools were found, no machinery, just antler picks and stone hammers. Yet somehow the builders had sculpted halls with perfect symmetry, vaults with acoustic perfection, and ceilings so precise that even modern engineers struggle to explain how they remain standing after 6 millennia. With the architecture of the afterlife, the hypogeum is more than a tomb. It's a 3-story labyrinth. Each level seems to serve a different purpose. The upper chambers hold altars and niches, where rituals likely took place. The middle level contains burial chambers, hundreds of them, and the lowest level, cut 35 feet below the surface, feels less like a human creation and more like a dream. Curved walls, red ochre spirals painted on the ceiling, and narrow passageways that lead to nowhere. Archaeologists found the remains of more than 7,000 people inside, bones stacked carefully, arranged deliberately, some positioned as if in sleep. Many skulls were elongated, stretched, almost alien in form, unlike those of modern humans. Whether this was the result of ritual deformation or something more mysterious, no one knows. But it adds an eerie dimension to the site, as though it was not merely a tomb but a place of transformation. Imagine descending those stairs thousands of years ago, holding a flickering flame. The walls shimmer red from the ochre paint, spirals, waves, and dots that seem to move in the shifting light. You hear chanting from below, a low tone rising and falling. The sound grows deeper, resonating in your bones, and suddenly you realize that the walls themselves are singing. Oh, the chamber that hums. One of the most enigmatic spaces within the hypogeum is known as the Oracle Room, a small oval chamber carved with mathematical precision, its walls smooth, its ceiling perfectly curved. When a man speaks inside this room, his voice transforms. The chamber amplifies low frequencies between 95 and 120 Hertz, creating a resonance so powerful that it vibrates through the entire complex. The sound doesn't just echo, it moves through stone, air, and body. Archaeologists, engineers, even acousticians from Stanford University have studied it. They all agree the effect is intentional. The hypogeum is an acoustic machine. When multiple voices chant together inside, their tones merge into a deep harmonic drone, the same frequency range that affects the human brain's theta waves, the state between wakefulness and trance. In other words, the Oracle Chamber is designed to induce altered states of consciousness. The people who built this place were not primitive. They understood sound not as noise but as power, a key to shift the mind between worlds. The red spirals. The walls and ceilings of the hypogeum are decorated with swirling patterns of red ochre, still visible after thousands of years. They form spirals, double spirals, and wave-like designs. To modernize, they look abstract, but to the ancient Maltese, these were symbols of the soul's journey, the passage from life to death and back again. The spiral appears across ancient cultures, in Celtic tombs, in Egyptian amulets, in Mayan glyphs, always representing the same thing, the eternal cycle, the unfolding of consciousness, the path through the underworld. Some believe these spirals were more than art, that they were maps, visual guides for souls traveling through the afterlife. In the flickering torchlight, they might have appeared to move, spin, or breathe, as if the stone itself were alive, guiding the spirit deeper into the earth. The skulls that shouldn't exist among the thousands of remains found in the hypogeum, a few stood out, literally. Several skulls exhibited unnatural elongation, not the result of binding or artificial deformation, but genetic. Their cranial volume was larger, their eye sockets wider, They didn't match the known human anatomy of the Neolithic era. Local museum records once listed 6 such skulls as part of the discovery. Photographs from the early 1900s confirmed their existence, yet today none of those skulls remain in public view. According to officials, they were misplaced during World War II, lost in or hidden. Whispers around Malta tell a different story, that the skulls were taken for study and quietly removed from the record after unsettling results. Whether that's true or myth, no one can say, but those who saw them described them as inhumanly large, with features that gave an impression of intelligence or something otherworldly. Could the hypogeum have been built by a people different from us, or perhaps for beings that were not entirely human? Feesti de Mutusi Wasma, the missing children. In 1940, a strange story emerged from a group of students visiting the site. According to local rumor, a class of school children entered the hypogeum with their teacher and never returned. Search parties combed every chamber, every tunnel, but found nothing. Some said they had wandered into a section of the complex that had been sealed off, a deeper level no one had mapped. Others whispered that their voices could still be heard, faintly beneath the streets, echoing through the rock. Authorities quickly dismissed the story as fiction, but it persists even now, an echo of something that feels uncomfortably possible, because the hypogeum's true limits remain unknown. Only 3 levels are open today, but ground-penetrating radar has detected more chambers even deeper, sealed and unreachable. No one knows what lies inside them. Perhaps just rock, perhaps something else. The frequency of the dead. When researchers from the International Institute of Sound and Vibration explored the Oracle Chamber, they discovered that its resonance affects human biology in measurable ways. At specific tones, the frequency triggers changes in the limbic system, the part of the brain associated with emotion, memory, and fear. Prolonged exposure induces trance, hallucination, even euphoria. Imagine ancient priests chanting within the chamber, while others waited in the dark, their heartbeat syncing to the vibration, their perception bending. The sound becomes physical, the physical becomes spiritual, then somewhere between those two, the dead could be heard. In that sense, the hypogeum was not a tomb at all. It was a communication device, a bridge between the living and the dead, using vibration as its language. The ancients called this the Oracle of the Dead. To speak here was to speak across worlds. Daitobri was kind of the builders who vanished. No one knows who built the hypogeum. The people who carved it left no written record, no name, no trace of their origin. Archaeologists call them the megalithic temple builders, the same culture that built Malta's other colossal stone temples. Gantija, Menajdra, Hagar Chim, all perfectly aligned with celestial events. Then around 2500 BCE they vanished. No war, no famine, just disappearance. Their temples were abandoned. Their craftsmanship never continued. It's as if an entire civilization simply dissolved into time, leaving behind structures that no subsequent culture could replicate. Even the Phoenicians, the Greeks, and the Romans, who later settled Malta, looked upon these ruins with awe and fear. They called them the houses of giants. Whoever built the hypogeum possessed knowledge of geometry, acoustics, and anatomy, far beyond their supposed era. And yet, like all the great mysteries of antiquity, they fell silent. Perhaps their temples did what they were designed to do, open a door. And when that door closed, the builders went with it. The breath of the earth today, the hypogeum is closed to most of the public. Only a handful of visitors are allowed inside each day. No cameras, no talking, just silence. The temperature never changes. The air feels heavy, ancient, like breathing through time. Standing in the oracle chamber, you can still hear the low hum if you whisper in the right tone. It travels through the walls, through your bones, through your heartbeat. It's unsettling but mesmerizing. A reminder that the oldest language in the world isn't written or spoken. It's vibrated. When you leave the hypogeum, stepping back into sunlight, you feel disoriented, as if emerging from another world. And maybe you are, because places like this weren't built for the world above. They were built beneath it, to remember what we lost when we began fearing the dark. The memory beneath. Perhaps the hypogeum isn't a tomb of death, but a tomb of knowledge. A repository of something ancient humans once understood, that consciousness is not bound to the body, that sound can alter perception, that stone can hold memory. Every civilization after forgot a little more of that truth, until only the echoes remained. In temples, in chants, in myths of underworlds and oracles. And maybe the hypogeum still waits, not to be studied but to be heard. Because when you whisper into its silence, it whispers back, not in words, but in resonance. But if Malta's underground labyrinth was built to connect with the underworld, what about the monuments that reach for the heavens? In the next chapter, we journey to the heart of Africa, to a land of colossal obelisks carved from single stones, rising higher than any man-made structure of their age. A civilization that vanished overnight, leaving behind monuments that seem to defy gravity itself. Prepare to uncover the forgotten kingdom of Axum, the obelisks of the gods, high on the northern plateau of Ethiopia, where the air is thin and the sun burns gold through the haze. Stand towers that pierce the sky, silent, monolithic, eternal. They are not built. They are carved, single stones raised in perfect balance, etched with windows, doors, and false floors, as if for spirits who never walk through them. These are the stelae of Axum, the obelisks of a forgotten empire, remnants of a civilization so advanced its achievements still challenge history itself. The Lost Kingdom. Long before Europe rose from its dark ages, long before Islam spread across the desert, there was Axum, a city of stone and sunlight. It ruled the Horn of Africa from about the 1st century CE to the 7th, trading with Rome, Persia, and India. Its coins carried Greek inscriptions. Its ships crossed the Red Sea. In its time, it was one of the world's great empires, the fourth major power after Rome, Persia, and China. And yet today it is little more than ruins and memory. The ancient city sits on a high plateau more than 7,000 feet above sea level. From here, its kings ruled with wealth and mystery, claiming descent from the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon himself. Legends say the Ark of the Covenant, the golden chest of divine law, rests in Axum to this day, guarded in a chapel that no one may enter. But it is not the Ark that draws the eye. It is the stone towers, the massive, elegant, and impossible. The obelisks of stone. Across the ancient city stand dozens of carved monoliths, some fallen, others still upright. Each one is a single piece of granite, quarried and shaped without metal machinery, raised to impossible heights. The tallest one stood 108 feet, weighing over 500 tons. Even the largest cranes on Earth would struggle to lift it today. And yet, 1,800 years ago, someone carved it from the mountain, transported it across a valley, and set it upright, with perfect precision. Each obelisk is carved like a multi-story building, complete with windows, doors, and false beams. These are not random decorations. They are miniature representations of palaces, houses for the spirits of kings. In the Axumite worldview, death was not an end, but a continuation. The stelae were eternal homes, built not for the body, but for the soul. But one question overshadows all others. How did they do it? The engineering enigma. The granite used for the Axum stelae came from quarries several miles away. At a site called Gobidra Hill, there, unfinished stelae still lie abandoned, cracked, half-carved, massive. The builders didn't use mortar or metal scaffolding. They worked with stone tools and rope. At least that's what we're told. Yet modern geologists examining the surfaces have found cuts too fine for crude tools. Some grooves are straight and symmetrical, as though made by saws or drills. Even more astonishing is the transportation. How do you move a 500-ton stone through hills and valleys without steel wheels or engines? Some theorize they used rolling logs or sledges, lubricated with oil and pulled by hundreds of oxen. But in Aksum's rocky terrain, that's nearly impossible. The most plausible route includes steep inclines and narrow passes, impossible for such massive weight. Even today, no team has successfully recreated the feat using ancient technology. One local legend offers a different answer. The stones were sung into place, that the builders possessed a sound and a frequency that could lift stone from earth to air. It sounds fantastical, and yet from Egypt to Tibet, from Malta to Peru, the same stories appear, of stones that moved as if weightless when sacred hymns were sung. Could there be a fragment of truth in the myth? Could the ancients have known how to use sound as energy, resonance as technology? Kakue, the king's monument. The greatest of the Aksumite obelisks was the Great Stela, now broken into 3 immense pieces. When it stood, it towered over the city, more than 10 stories high. Archaeologists believe it marked the tomb of a legendary king, though no burial chamber has ever been found beneath it. The stela's base is cut with precision, its foundations fitted into sockets carved into solid rock. This wasn't a random placement. It was engineered, a monument designed to align with the stars. At sunrise on certain days, light strikes the carvings of the Great Stela in such a way that the false doors glow, as if the spirits were opening them from within. It's not art. It's symbolism made real through geometry. The Aksumites understood astronomy. They tracked the solstice and equinox, mapping their monuments to celestial patterns, the same knowledge seen in the pyramids of Egypt and the ziggurats of Mesopotamia. How did this science reach Africa's highlands? Was it born here or inherited from something older? The lost civilization. Beneath the fields around Aksum, radar surveys have detected vast subterranean chambers, sealed catacombs stretching for miles. Most remain unexplored. Some may hold royal tombs, others unknown structures. Local lore says that tunnels connect Aksum to other ancient sites across Ethiopia, even to Lalibela, the city of monolithic churches carved from living rock hundreds of miles away. Those churches too are said to have been built by angels overnight, echoing the same legends told of Kailasa in India. Could Aksum and Lalibela be part of a larger network, remnants of a forgotten architectural system that spanned continents? It's not impossible. Many of their carvings share the same trapezoidal doorways and symbolic cross forms found in far older sites like Tiwanaku and Pumapunku. How could cultures separated by oceans create identical architectural features unless they were inheriting from the same lost source? Thasiski had a dream of the obelisk that traveled the world. In 1937, during Italy's occupation of Ethiopia, Mussolini's forces looted the second-largest Aksum obelisk, a 24-meter monolith weighing 160 tons. They cut it into pieces and shipped it to Rome, erecting it near the Circus Maximus as a symbol of imperial conquest. For decades, Ethiopians demanded its return. Finally, in 2005, after nearly 70 years, the obelisk was brought home, reassembled and re-erected in its original place. It stands once again proud and unbroken, as though it never left. The return of the obelisk was more than an act of diplomacy. It was a homecoming of history, a resurrection of memory, because these stones are not mere monuments. They are archives of meaning encoded in architecture. When the obelisk's shadow touches the ground at noon, it aligns perfectly with the direction of the Nile, the river that to the ancients connected Earth to eternity. That alignment cannot be coincidence. It's a signature, one written not in ink but in sunlight. The hidden star map. Researchers have long noticed that Aksum's stellar fields resemble a celestial pattern. The arrangement of the Orion constellation, particularly its belt stars. This same pattern appears in Giza, Teotihuacan, and Angkor. Across the globe, Ancient builders seemed obsessed with mirroring the heavens. If Aksum's layout corresponds to Orion, it suggests the builders were encoding astronomical knowledge into stone. But to what end? Some believe these monuments were gateways, vibrational beacons connecting earth and sky, life and death, human and divine. The false doors carved into the stelae were symbolic thresholds, places where the soul could leave the body and ascend among the stars. Each obelisk was both tomb and transmitter, a cosmic antenna tuned to eternity. Sawisti Iskan, or the empire that disappeared by the 7th century, Aksum's glory faded. Trade routes shifted. The Red Sea fell under Islamic control. Drought and soil exhaustion followed. The empire withdrew into the mountains, and the city of stone fell silent. The obelisks, once gleaming in sunlight, stood alone, half buried in dust. And soon they were forgotten. But even in ruin, Aksum's legend endured. In the Ethiopian epic Kebra Nagast, it is said that the Ark of the Covenant was brought here by Menelik, son of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. To this day, one monk guards the Ark in a small chapel, the Church of St. Mary of Zion. No one else may see it. He lives and dies as its guardian. His eyes alone behold the relic that, if real, connects the ancient world's greatest myths, Israel, Egypt, and Aksum, into one unbroken thread. Perhaps that's why the Aksumites built as they did. They didn't just raise stones, they raised stories. They turned faith into geometry, and through geometry, they reached for the divine. Seek the memory of the monoliths. When you stand beneath one of the Aksum obelisks, you feel something strange, a quiet vibration, a sense of weight and grace. The granite hums in the wind. The sun plays across its carvings, revealing patterns that shift with light. You realize that this is more than stone. It's a frozen symphony, one that has been playing for nearly 2,000 years. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear the rhythm of hammers, the chant of workers, the whisper of priests invoking the gods of heaven and earth. Because Aksum was not just a city of kings. It was a city of memory. The stelae are its guardians, reminders that human hands once reached impossible heights not through conquest, but through reverence. And even though the empire fell, its stones endure, like tuning forks struck once and still vibrating in eternity. Soasti Yarasti Kisun, the skyward path. Every great civilization seems to have understood something we've forgotten, that stone is alive, that geometry speaks, that light and sound are sacred languages. Aksum joins that chorus, a chapter of the same story written in Malta, Peru, Egypt, India. Different voices, same song, and perhaps together they form a map, not of places but of consciousness, a record left behind by those who knew the secret, that divinity isn't something above us, it's something we can build toward, one perfect alignment, one carved stone, one vibration at a time. But what if those same ancient builders, or their descendants, carried their sacred knowledge far across the sea, to a land thought untouched by old world influence? What if the Americas too hide monuments that whisper the same story of gods, geometry, and forgotten science? In the next chapter, we cross the Atlantic to stand before the red sandstone giants of South America, blocks that fit with microscopic precision, walls that laugh at earthquakes, and myths that speak of bearded gods from beyond the sea. Prepare to uncover Sacsayhuaman, the stone fortress of the sky. Sacsayhuaman, the stone fortress of the sky high in the Peruvian Andes, where the air thins and clouds drift like ghosts across jagged peaks, lies a fortress that seems impossible, a jigsaw of stone so precise it might as well have been poured like liquid and frozen in place. Its walls curve like serpents, its blocks fit like gears in an ancient machine. And yet these stones weigh not tons but hundreds of tons. This is Sacsayhuaman, the fortress in the sky. For centuries it has defied logic, science, and every explanation offered by archaeology. Because when you stand before these walls, one question echoes through your mind. Who could have built this? Wow, the city above the clouds. Sacsayhuaman crowns the city of Cusco, once the beating heart of the Inca Empire, the empire the Spanish conquistadors called the navel of the world. At nearly 12,000 feet above sea level, the fortress overlooks the valley like a guardian, carved from the mountain itself. Its terraces form zigzagging lines, a three-tiered wall stretching more than 1,000 feet long, each layer composed of enormous polygonal stones. Some are the size of buses, each weighing between 100 and 350 tons. But these aren't crude boulders. They're carved with such uncanny precision that you cannot slide a blade of grass between them. No mortar, no filler, only perfect contact stone to stone. Even after 500 years of earthquakes, rain and war, the walls still stand, unshaken, uncracked. The Spanish tried to tear them down and failed. Nature tried to destroy them and failed. Time tried and failed. Whatever force built Sacsayhuaman didn't just build for beauty. It built for eternity. Thaisi Ma Fog, the puzzle of the giants. Each block in Sacsayhuaman is unique. No two are alike. Some have 12 sides, some 24. They interlock in complex, almost biological patterns, fitting together like pieces of a massive stone puzzle. And yet, the joints are so tight that even modern engineers can't replicate them without advanced machinery. Every corner, every curve is intentional, carved to distribute seismic energy evenly across the wall. When earthquakes strike, the stones shift minutely, absorbing the force and settling back into place. No modern skyscraper in Lima or Tokyo achieves that level of harmony between design and earth. How did the builders cut, move and position stones that weigh more than a fully loaded Boeing 747, without steel tools or wheels? Archaeologists say they used simple copper chisels and manpower. But copper is soft. It bends before it cuts granite or andesite. So how were these colossal blocks shaped with such mathematical precision? One theory is heat, that the Inca, or perhaps the civilization before them, possessed a method of softening stone. Some researchers claim that the surfaces show evidence of thermal alteration, as if exposed to intense heat or even chemical processes that made the stone malleable. Local legends echo this. The Quechua people tell stories of priests who used sacred plants to make the rocks as soft as clay. Then they molded and pressed them together until they hardened again. Could it be true? We don't know, but every surface of Sacsayhuaman whispers that possibility. Toisti Paisida Descasund, the builders before the Incas. The Incas themselves never claimed to have built Sacsayhuaman. They said it was there long before them, the work of the gods. According to oral tradition, it was built by the ancient race of Viracochas, tall, pale-skinned, bearded beings who came from across the sea after a great flood, bringing with them knowledge of architecture, astronomy, and the stars. They taught humans how to shape the land, then vanished, promising to return. When the Spanish arrived in the 1500s, the Incas thought the prophecy had come true. They believed the bearded foreigners were the returning Viracochas. But the truth was darker. Instead of gods, they had met conquerors. Still, the myth of Viracocha persists, a god who emerged from Lake Titicaca to bring order to chaos, light to darkness. He traveled the Andes, raising temples, building walls, shaping humanity itself. The great megaliths of the region, Tiwanaku, Ollantaytambo, Machu Picchu, all bear the same mysterious signature: stonework that transcends the limits of known history. Can Sacsayhuaman stands as their crown, the culmination of a forgotten science. Was Dyson Como, the stones that move. Moving the blocks from the quarry, located miles away, remains one of the greatest unsolved engineering feats in history. The steep inclines, thin air, and jagged terrain make transportation of even small stones a nightmare today. Yet these builders moved hundreds of them, some weighing more than 300 tons. Modern attempts to reproduce their methods using ropes and ramps have failed repeatedly. At best, teams can move stones 1/10 that size. Some speculate the builders used rolling logs or earthen ramps, but the quarries lie at lower elevations, meaning the stones would have had to be pulled uphill. And yet every block arrived perfectly intact, placed as if guided by invisible hands. When asked how their ancestors did it, local elders simply smile and say, "The stones move themselves." Saistebrupimus, by name the Temple of the Lightning God. Despite its fortress-like appearance, Sacsayhuaman may not have been built for war. Its serpentine walls align with astronomical events, and the site itself forms the shape of a puma, the sacred animal of power and protection. Cusco, the city below, formed the body. Sacsayhuaman was its head, the mind of the empire. At the center stood the Temple of Illapa, the god of lightning and sky. During festivals, Inca priests offered chicha, fermented corn, to the heavens, while the emperor himself, seen as the son of the sun, performed rites of renewal. They believed the stones held the earth's life force, Pachamama, and that by aligning them they could channel her energy into the sky. To the uninitiated it was superstition. To the ancients it was physics, a science of spirit and vibration. Ban Ken Uin geometry of the gods. When mapped from above, Sacsayhuaman's walls form fractal patterns, repeating geometries that mirror natural formations like DNA spirals and crystal lattices. These patterns aren't random. They appear across ancient architecture from Egypt to Cambodia. It's as if all these civilizations were following the same blueprint, one based not on religion, but on resonance. Measurements reveal that Sacsayhuaman's layout encodes sacred ratios. The golden ratio, 1:6:18, the Fibonacci sequence, and even harmonic frequencies found in sound. When wind blows through certain passages, it creates low-frequency tones, similar to Malta's hypogum or the oracle room at Delphi. It's as though the entire site was tuned like an instrument, designed to vibrate with the earth. Could Sacsayhuaman have been more than a fortress or temple? Could it have been a power site, a megalithic amplifier connecting heaven and earth? The Inca called such places huacas, points of spiritual and energetic convergence. They believed these locations maintained the balance between the natural and cosmic orders. And when you stand among Sacsayhuaman's walls, it's hard not to feel it. A subtle pressure, a hum in your bones, as though the mountain itself is alive and aware of your presence. The Spanish encounter. When the Spanish conquistadors reached Cusco in 1533, they were stunned by Sacsayhuaman's scale. They assumed it was a fortress and captured it during the siege of Cusco. Even cannon fire and siege towers couldn't destroy it. After the war, the Spanish dismantled much of the upper structure to build churches and colonial homes, but the megalithic foundation refused to yield. No matter how much they broke away, the Great Walls endured. The chronicler Garcilaso de la Vega, born of both Inca and Spanish blood, wrote that even the conquerors whispered among themselves, "This was not built by men, but by giants." And perhaps in a sense it was by giants of knowledge, not of stature. Thilasty, and damn it the science we forgot modern engineers, studying Sacsayhuaman marvel at the builder's mastery of stone fitting under stress. They used a technique we call polygonal masonry, but the precision is so advanced it borders on digital. There are no straight lines, only interlocking curves that distribute force evenly. Each block is like a three-dimensional puzzle piece, fitted into the next with microscopic accuracy. Some joints even feature small knobs or nubs, possibly used to manipulate or lift the stones. Yet no lifting system has ever been identified. Some researchers have suggested the builders had a profound understanding of geomagnetic fields, aligning stones in ways that enhanced structural stability and perhaps even created subtle electromagnetic effects. Recent studies show that many megalithic sites emit faint electromagnetic anomalies, consistent with naturally charged rock formations. If the ancients knew how to amplify that energy through design, they might have created structures that were more than mere temples. They were engines. First Monte Cadredas caused the legacy of the Sky Fortress. Over centuries, earthquakes have ravaged Cusco, but Sacsayhuaman stones remain. They shift, breathe, and settle back into place, as though the mountain itself protects them. No mortar cracks, no walls collapse. It's not construction, it's integration, architecture woven into geology. Today, every June, thousands of Peruvians gather here to celebrate Inti Raymi, the festival of the sun. Actors dressed as Inca priests, dancers in golden headdresses. The emperor himself carried on a litter, all under the open sky. They chant, they sing, and the old walls echo back the sound. It feels timeless, as if the builders themselves are still listening. And maybe they are, because some places are not just built, they are born. The language of stone Sacsayhuaman isn't just a ruin. It's a text, a message carved in a language we no longer speak, the language of form, frequency, and harmony. Each wall, each block, each pattern speaks of a civilization that understood the earth not as an obstacle, but as a partner. They didn't dominate nature. They collaborated with it, and in doing so, they achieved what we can barely imagine today. Permanence through unity. Perhaps the real secret of Sacsayhuaman isn't lost technology, but lost perception. The ability to see the world not as inert matter, but as living energy. Because when you carve in resonance with nature, your work endures as long as nature itself. But if the stones of the Andes speak of ancient harmony, the jungles of Mesoamerica tell a different story. One of blood, sacrifice, and celestial cycles so precise they rival modern astronomy. In the next chapter, we travel north to the land of the Maya, where pyramids rise like calendars and temples whisper of gods who descended from the stars. Prepare to enter Chichen Itza, the temple of the feathered serpent. Chichen Itza, the temple of the feathered serpent deep in the jungles of the Yucatan Peninsula, where humidity hangs like breath and the air hums with unseen life. A city rises from the earth as if grown, not built. Its name, Chichen Itza, means at the mouth of the well of the Itza. But beneath that translation lies something far older, far stranger, a memory of gods that descended from the sky, and men who watched the stars for messages from beyond. This city was not merely a capital, it was a cosmic machine, built to align with the heavens, track the flow of time and echo the movements of celestial bodies through sound and shadow. And at its center stands one of the most iconic and mysterious structures on Earth, El Castillo, the Temple of Kukulkan. The feathered serpent, the pyramid that breathes to approach El Castillo is to feel watched. The pyramid stands 98 feet high, its four sides perfectly aligned with the cardinal directions, north, south, east, west. Each side has 91 steps, and with the final platform at the top, they total 365, one for every day of the solar year. Every line, every stone, every angle encodes astronomical precision, but it is not the numbers that astonish. It is what happens when the Earth itself moves. Twice a year, on the spring and autumn equinoxes, the setting sun strikes the pyramid's northwest corner at just the right angle. As the light fades, it creates a serpent of shadow that slithers down the steps, joining the carved serpent heads at the base. For 34 minutes, the illusion dances, a perfect optical symphony of light, shadow, and geometry. The ancients gathered to watch it in awe. For them, it wasn't illusion. It was Kukulkan, the feathered serpent god, descending from the heavens to bless the earth. And here's what most people don't realize. The effect isn't accidental. It's engineered to the degree of modern computer models. The pyramid's orientation, step size, and angle of elevation were all designed to produce this living shadow, a celestial miracle carved into limestone. Dosin Mas Tuinath, the serpent god, returns, who was Kukulkan. To the Maya, he was the god of wind, wisdom, and resurrection, a serpent adorned with feathers, representing both earth and sky. He was the bridge between heaven and humankind. But across ancient Mesoamerica, he appears under many names. Quetzalcoatl to the Aztecs, Gucumatz to the Quiche Maya, Topiltzin to the Toltecs. Legends say he was not merely a god, but a being of flesh, a pale-skinned, bearded man who came from across the sea, bringing knowledge of astronomy, architecture, and law. He taught peace, forbade human sacrifice, and promised to return one day from the east. When the Spanish conquistadors landed on the Yucatan coast in 1519, many Maya believed that prophecy had come true. They thought Hernán Cortés was Kukulcán returned, and they welcomed him. But just as in the Andes, what arrived from the sea was not salvation. It was conquest. The story of Kukulcán mirrors that of Viracocha in Peru, a shared memory of teacher gods who arrived after a cataclysm, civilizing humanity before vanishing again. Coincidence or cultural echo of a truth we've forgotten? The pyramid that sings El Castillo doesn't only move with light, it speaks with sound. Stand at the base and clap your hands once. The echo that returns isn't a normal echo. It chirps, a sharp melodic sound resembling the call of the quetzal, the sacred bird of the Maya. Acousticians have confirmed the effect. The pyramid's stepped terraces reflect sound waves in a way that perfectly recreates the bird's cry. This is not random. It's intentional. The pyramid was designed to mimic the voice of the divine messenger. The Maya didn't just observe nature, they built with it. They carved temples that were not only visual instruments, but acoustic ones. When priests and worshippers chanted together, the pyramid amplified their voices, creating harmonic vibrations that resonated across the plaza. Like Malta's hypogam, Chichen Itza was tuned, an ancient amplifier of ritual sound. Erstunbati Taka, the descent into darkness. Beneath the pyramid lies another mystery, one literally hidden under our feet. In the 1930s, archaeologists discovered a chamber beneath El Castillo, and within it a second, smaller pyramid, perfectly preserved inside the first, like a nesting doll. At its heart sat a red jaguar throne, encrusted with jade and shells. Its eyes gleamed. Its teeth were gold. And beneath that lies something even older still, a natural sinkhole, a cenote, a well that plunges deep into the earth. Recent radar scans confirmed that El Castillo sits directly above it, as if built deliberately on the edge of an underworld portal. In Maya cosmology, these cenotes were gateways to Xibalba, the realm of the dead. They were not to be feared. They were sacred doors between worlds. When priests performed rituals atop the pyramid, the sounds, the shadows, and the energy of the ceremonies echoed down into the earth, as if feeding the underworld itself. El Castillo was not just a temple. It was a connector between sun and shadow, life and death, heaven and earth. Thaspi Kumika, the cenote of sacrifice. A short walk north of the pyramid lies another cenote, vast, circular, and haunting. Its waters are deep and still, stained green by centuries of jungle runoff. The Maya called it the Sacred Well, and for good reason. In 1904, explorer Edward Thompson dredged the cenote and uncovered thousands of artifacts: gold, jade, pottery, obsidian. But he also found something else: bones, hundreds of them, men, women, children. Their skeletons showed marks of trauma, fractures, and cut wounds. These were human sacrifices, offerings to the rain god Chak, who dwelled within the watery depths. For the Maya, sacrifice was not cruelty. It was reciprocity, a gift to maintain cosmic balance. To them, life and death were two halves of a cycle, and to ensure the rains came, the people offered what was most precious, themselves. It is horrifying to us, but to them it was sacred duty. They weren't killing. They were feeding the gods, and through them the earth. And the astronomers of time, Chichen Itza, was more than ritual ground. It was a calendar made of stone. Its layout aligns not only with the equinoxes, but with Venus, the morning star that dictated wars, harvests, and the sacred calendar of the Maya. Their Dresden Codex, one of the few surviving Maya books, charts Venus's movement with accuracy surpassing even early European astronomy. And El Castillo mirrors that precision. Its geometry encodes the planet's synodic cycle, 584 days, within its steps and terraces. At the Temple of the Warriors nearby, hundreds of columns form a grid that marks solar alignments. Each year, light filters between them at exact intervals, transforming the plaza into a living sundial. These weren't random alignments. They were proof of a worldview where architecture, astronomy, and spirituality were inseparable. The Maya didn't just study the heavens, they synchronized with them. The collapse. Around 1200 CE, Chichen Itza was abandoned. Its temples fell silent, its plazas empty. The jungle crept back, swallowing stone and story alike. No one knows exactly why. Drought, war, internal conflict, all are possible. But perhaps it was something simpler, the end of a cycle. The Maya believed time was cyclical, composed of repeating ages called baktuns. Each age ended not with apocalypse, but with renewal. When one cycle completed, the world was reborn, cleansed, rebalanced. The last major cycle ended in 2012, a date that modern superstition turned into fear. But for the Maya, it was never about destruction. It was about transformation. The serpent shedding its skin. And maybe in a strange way the prophecy came true, not as fire and flood, but as awakening. Because we're beginning to rediscover what they knew all along, that everything, stars, stones, souls, is connected by pattern and rhythm. The memory in the stone. Standing before El Castillo today, tourists see symmetry and wonder. But if you listen, truly listen, you can still hear the whisper of the ancient city beneath the chatter. The birds cry. The wind hums through corridors. The pyramid breathes. The jungle doesn't hide Chichen Itza. It guards it, like memory guards truth. And if you close your eyes, you can imagine the equinox again. Thousands gathered, drums echoing, feathers rustling, incense smoke coiling toward the sun. Then the shadow moves, the serpent descends, and for one perfect moment, stone becomes spirit. The god returns. It's easy to dismiss it as myth, but myth is memory wearing poetry's face. And perhaps what the Maya remembered wasn't fantasy at all, but contact with something greater, something cosmic, something that once walked among them. Thursday Kuaman, the feathered truth Kukulkan's promise to return, echoes through ages, mirrored by similar prophecies across continents. Viracocha in Peru, Osiris in Egypt, Thoth in Atlantis, Quetzalcoatl in Mexico. Different names, same essence, a god of wisdom who arrives, teaches, and departs, leaving humanity with tools to build civilization. Could these myths be fractured memories of a shared past, of a forgotten epoch when gods were simply advanced beings? Or are they metaphors for something deeper, the awakening of knowledge itself? Maybe Kukulkan never left. Maybe he lives in every human mind that looks up at the stars and feels both small and infinite. But if Chichen Itza shows how ancient civilizations reached upward to the stars, what about the places where they reached downward, into the earth, to seek what lies below? In the next chapter, we journey to a network so vast it stretches beneath an entire modern city, a labyrinth of tunnels carved by hands unknown, leading to chambers filled with secrets that rewrite human history. Prepare to descend into Derinkuyu, the underground city of shadows. Beneath the plains of Cappadocia, in the heart of modern-day Turkey, lies a world that defies imagination. A world carved not above the earth but under it. A world that could hide tens of thousands of people, entire communities, in total silence, total darkness. It is a city without sunlight, a city without sky, a city built as if by those who feared the heavens themselves. This is Derinkuyu, the underground city of shadows, a labyrinth so vast that we have yet to find its end. A hidden door. It began with an accident. In 1963, a man in the small town of Derinkuyu decided to renovate his house. He knocked down a wall in his basement and behind it found a dark passage leading down into the earth. At first he thought it was just an old cellar, but the tunnel kept going, until it opened into chambers so large he could barely see the ceiling. When archaeologists arrived, they realized what they'd uncovered wasn't a cellar. It was an entire city. Rooms, corridors, ventilation shafts, wells, kitchens, schools, stables, wine cellars, churches, all carved out of volcanic rock. And it didn't stop there. They kept descending. 1 level, 2 levels, 3. By the time they reached the bottom, they'd gone more than 280 feet underground, at least 18 levels deep. And those are just the ones we've explored. Some tunnels stretch for miles, connecting to other underground complexes across Cappadocia. Together, they could shelter up to 100,000 people. And the city. Beneath the earth, walking through Derinkuyu feels like stepping into a living organism. Its tunnels twist and branch like arteries. Its chambers open like lungs. Every corridor has a purpose. Every angle is deliberate. The main ventilation shaft plunges straight down from the surface, a cylindrical core that still carries fresh air even thousands of years later. Engineers have tested it. The airflow remains constant, even when upper passages are sealed. That means the builders understood air pressure, airflow, and thermal regulation, in an era when most humans were still using open fires in caves. At strategic points, the tunnels narrow to choke points, only wide enough for one person to pass at a time. In times of danger, these could be sealed with massive circular stone doors, each weighing hundreds of pounds. They were rolled into place from inside, perfect defense mechanisms against intruders. If enemies entered, they'd find themselves trapped in a maze designed to suffocate or starve them. This was no primitive refuge. It was a fortress, a masterpiece of underground engineering. But the question that haunts every researcher is the same. Who built it? The mystery of the builders' mainstream archaeology credits the Phrygians, a people who lived in Anatolia around the 8th century BCE. They supposedly expanded natural caves to create hiding places during wars. But there's a problem. The Phrygians left writing, art, and architecture above ground, none of which resembled Derinkuyu's smooth, rounded, labyrinthine design. The rock-cut technology seen here, the symmetry, the scale, the precision, matches much older structures found elsewhere in the region. Some geologists estimate the lowest levels could be at least 10,000 years old, dating back to the end of the last ice age. That would make Derinkuyu older than the pyramids, older than Mesopotamia, older than history itself. Even the local legends say so. According to ancient Cappadocian lore, the city was built by beings known as the Anunnaki, the same sky gods spoken of in Sumerian mythology. They came from above, the stories say, but were forced to hide below when the world was consumed by fire, the fires of the sun. A global catastrophe. A world on fire. Could that legend describe a real event? Around 12,800 years ago, the Earth underwent a sudden climate collapse, the Younger Dryas impact event. Evidence suggests a massive comet or asteroid struck the planet, triggering global fires, floods, and temperature drops. Meltwater from glaciers flooded coastlines. Ash darkened the sky. The world changed overnight. If Derinkuyu was first carved during that time, it wasn't built for war. It was built for survival. A refuge from something far worse than human enemies, perhaps from the sky itself. Inside Derinkuyu, archaeologists found blackened walls, traces of soot from torches or fires. But they also found ancient ventilation systems, water channels, and granaries, evidence that its inhabitants stayed underground for months, maybe years. Some rooms show signs of long-term habitation, smoke deposits on ceilings, bone fragments, and tools. This wasn't a temporary shelter. It was home. And if it was home, it means someone had enough time, knowledge, and purpose to carve an entire civilization beneath the ground. Yathimaturik of the lost knowledge of stone. The rock of Cappadocia, tough, is soft when first exposed to air but hardens over time. That means the builders would have had to carve the city quickly before the rock set. The uniform smoothness of Derinkuyi's walls suggests advanced tools, perhaps bronze or even iron chisels, yet no such tools have ever been found. No inscriptions, no markings, no signatures of any kind. The absence of artifacts is itself a mystery. It's as though the builders erased their presence, or were erased. Even more puzzling are the resonant properties of the chambers. Acousticians discovered that certain rooms amplify low-frequency sounds, similar to the oracle chamber of Malta. The effect could induce trance-like states, used perhaps for ritual, communication, or even healing. It suggests the builders understood acoustics and vibration, the same knowledge seen in megalithic sites worldwide. Coincidence or connection? Science, and of the underground network Derinkuyu isn't alone. Cappadocia hides over 200 underground cities, many connected by tunnels stretching for miles. Kaymakli Özkonak Mazı, each with its own chambers, wells, and hidden passages. Together, they form a subterranean world beneath the mountains, one that may have once housed an entire population. Satellite imaging shows the region is riddled with voids and anomalies, hinting that what we've uncovered so far is only a fraction of what lies below. Some tunnels seem to lead toward ancient volcanoes. Others dead-end at walls that might conceal sealed doors, unopened for millennia. The Turkish government has sealed many of these passages, citing safety concerns. But rumors persist among locals, of archaeologists who found chambers they were never allowed to publish. Rooms filled not with tools or pottery, but with something else. Distitantes, lost myths of the underworld. The idea of hidden civilizations beneath the earth isn't unique to Turkey. Nearly every ancient culture has stories of subterranean beings, from the Nagas of India to the Agharti of Tibet, from the Sheol of the Hebrews to the Duat of Egypt. They all speak of tunnels, chambers, and beings who withdrew underground during a catastrophe. Could Derinkuyu be one of those ancient refugees, a fragment of a global network of underground sanctuaries? If so, who were they protecting themselves from? And why did they vanish? Some fringe researchers suggest an even bolder theory, that Derinkuyu was built not by humans, but for them, by an advanced civilization guiding early humanity through an extinction-level event. Others say it was the work of survivors from Atlantis, a remnant culture that migrated inland when their oceanic homeland was destroyed. There's no direct evidence for either, but the precision and scale of the city make the question hard to dismiss. Abaytulprat the echoes below. Imagine standing there, a single figure holding a torch in the darkness, your breath echoing down tunnels carved by unknown hands. The silence feels alive. Every step sends whispers through the rock. You realize you are walking in a place that was once filled with the sounds of children, laughter, prayer, fear. Generations were born and died down here, never seeing the sky, and yet they survived. Whatever disaster drove them below, they endured, long enough to pass on their knowledge, their myths, their warning. Some of that knowledge resurfaced thousands of years later, in the stone temples of Egypt, the ziggurats of Sumer, the sacred caves of India, all describing a cycle of destruction and rebirth, all echoing the same truth. The earth remembers what we forget. Thus Matirus rediscovery. Today, tourists can only visit a fraction of Derinkuyu. Narrow passages wind into darkness. The air cools, the light fades, and suddenly you understand why ancient people called this the womb of the earth. Down here, time doesn't exist. It feels older than human memory, older than fear. Archaeologists continue to map new sections, but even with modern technology, much of the system remains unreachable. There are places where compasses spin, where electronic signals fail. The rock itself seems to guard its secrets. And maybe that's the point. Perhaps Derinkuyu was meant not only to protect bodies, but to protect knowledge. A library written in stone, sealed for those who would one day understand. Terstu Takia Dumata, the whisper of the past. When you finally ascend back to the surface, blinking against the sunlight, you feel disoriented, like waking from a collective dream. The wind feels louder, the sky feels bluer, and for a brief moment you wonder, what if this world above is just the upper floor of something far larger? A civilization layered upon civilizations, each one built on the ruins of the last. Derinkuyu is not just an archaeological site. It is a metaphor carved in stone, a reminder that humanity has always hidden from its own past, that beneath every story of creation lies a story of survival. And beneath every civilization, there may be another still sleeping. But what if those ancient survivors, the ones who dug beneath the earth, were not hiding from extinction, but preparing for something greater? In our final chapter, we'll journey to the deserts of Egypt, where forgotten texts, strange alignments, and impossible architecture point toward a secret buried in plain sight. A secret that might explain all of them, from Malta to Peru, from the stars to the underworld. Prepare for the conclusion, the hidden blueprint, the lost science of the ancients, from the deserts of Egypt to the mountains of Peru, from the frozen steppes of Turkey to the steaming jungles of the Yucatan. Every site we've explored whispers the same thing. They were not guessing. They were remembering. They built with precision, not faith. They aligned with stars, not superstition. They carved in silence, not ignorance. And now, as we stand in the shadow of the world's oldest monuments, the question rises again. A question older than civilization itself. How did they know? How did they know where to build, how to measure, how to align? Without modern tools, without machines, without light except fire and stars. The answer may be simpler and stranger than we think, because across the ruins there is a pattern, a hidden blueprint, a code written not in words but in numbers, geometry and resonance. The geometry of God. The ancients called it the music of creation. Today we call it sacred geometry. From the pyramids of Giza to Stonehenge, from Sacsayhuaman to Chichen Itza, the same ratios appear again and again. 1:1, 618, the golden ratio. The same angles, 51, 84 degrees, the slope of the Great Pyramid, matching the geometry of the Earth's curvature. The same numbers, 3, 6, 9, the triad Nikola Tesla called the key to the universe. These numbers weren't random. They were universal. They were the mathematical fingerprints of reality itself. Ancient builders didn't just build on the earth, they built with it. Their monuments are tuned to planetary frequencies, to magnetic lines, to the invisible grid that connects all living things. When you map these sacred sites across the globe, they're not scattered at random. They form alignments, lines, nodes, patterns, like a global circuit board. What if the ancients were mapping energy? What if their temples, pyramids, and stone circles weren't merely places of worship, but machines? First almost the world grid. In 1970, scientists discovered that the Earth's magnetic field forms geometric patterns, lines of concentrated energy called ley lines. Ancient monuments, strangely, sit directly on these intersections. The Great Pyramid of Giza, Machu Picchu, Stonehenge, Easter Island. Even Derinkuyu. How could people separated by oceans and millennia have known this? Unless they shared something deeper. Not technology, but knowledge. It's as though they were following a global design, building temples not to gods above, but to energies below. The earth itself was their circuit. Their architecture was the wiring. Their rituals were the current. Each structure, when activated by sound, fire, or motion, resonated with the Earth's frequency. 7. 83 Hertz, what modern science calls the Schumann resonance. That's the frequency of lightning, of brainwaves, of life. To the ancients, it was the heartbeat of the world. The science of vibration. Everything is vibration. That idea, often attributed to both Hermes Trismegistus and modern physics, bridges two worlds, ancient mysticism and quantum science. At the subatomic level, everything is energy in motion. And if you can control vibration, you can control matter. Sound becomes structure. Resonance becomes power. This may explain why so many ancient temples are acoustically tuned. At Malta's hypogeum, chanting in a specific pitch creates standing sound waves that vibrate the skull. At Chichen Itza, a single clap produces the cry of the quetzal bird. In Egypt's Great Pyramid, the king's chamber resonates at 440 Hz, amplifying low-frequency vibrations that match the Earth's resonance. These aren't coincidences. They're echoes of an ancient science, one that understood how frequency shapes form. Today we call it cymatics, the study of visible sound. When sand or water is exposed to vibration, it forms intricate geometric patterns, triangles, hexagons, spirals, the same shapes found carved into ancient stone. The ancients may have known that sound could lift, move, or shape matter. Perhaps this is why so many myths speak of songs that moved mountains, chants that built walls, voices that shaped the world. It wasn't magic. It was physics. Just a physics we've forgotten. The language of the gods. In Egypt, they called this hidden science Heka, the word of creation. In India, it was Shabda, the sound that manifests form. In the Andes, it was Sonko, vibration from the heart. All spoke of a creative power that could shape reality when aligned with truth and intention. The builders encoded that knowledge into their temples, using geometry as language. Every angle, every ratio, every resonance was a syllable in a universal tongue. A language of light and frequency, the same principles that govern DNA, atoms, galaxies, because the universe itself is a pattern, a vibration made visible. When humanity forgot that language, we didn't just lose architecture, we lost memory. We lost the ability to listen to the earth. And as the architects of memory, so who were these architects? Who first held this knowledge, and why did they hide it in stone? Ancient texts across the world describe the same story: a cataclysm, a flood, and survivors, the gods or the teachers, who rebuilt civilization. In Egypt, they were the followers of Thoth. In Mesopotamia, the Anunnaki. In South America, Viracocha's disciples. In Mesoamerica, Kukulkan's priests. Each carried fragments of a greater system, a science that united the physical and the spiritual, the seen and the unseen. But as centuries passed, the system fractured. Empires fell. Knowledge turned into myth. Science became superstition. The temples decayed. The meanings were forgotten, but the geometry remained, waiting for those with eyes to see. Archaeological, adding the Giza key. Among all the monuments on Earth, one still holds the heart of this hidden blueprint, the Great Pyramid of Giza. Standing at the exact center of Earth's landmass, aligned perfectly with true north, within a fraction of a degree, it's not just a tomb. It's a map. Its proportions encode the dimensions of the Earth, the Moon, and even the precession of the equinoxes. A 26,000-year astronomical cycle. The base perimeter divided by twice its height equals P. The pyramid's height squared equals the area of its base divided by the golden ratio. Every number, every measure, every alignment tells a story, not of death but of knowledge. Some theorists believe the Great Pyramid wasn't built as a tomb at all, but as a resonance chamber, designed to interact with the Earth's frequencies, perhaps even to generate power or consciousness itself. In 2018, physicists discovered that the pyramid's internal structure focuses electromagnetic energy into its internal chambers. Accident or intention? The deeper you look, the harder it is to believe in coincidence, because coincidence doesn't carve stone to a millionth of an inch. Coincidence doesn't align with the stars. Coincidence doesn't echo across continents. The blueprint beneath us. Now imagine this. What if every sacred site we've seen, from Malta to Machu Picchu, from Göbekli Tepe to Chichen Itza, is part of one vast system, a network left by an earlier civilization that understood the Earth not as a planet, but as a living organism, one that could be tuned. Each temple was a node. Each node harmonized energy, balancing weather, magnetism, even consciousness itself. The network maintained equilibrium between humanity and Earth, and when that system collapsed, through flood, war, or arrogance, the balance broke. Civilization reset. We inherited the ruins, but not the instructions. That's the secret the ancients tried to preserve in myth. Atlantis, Mu, Lemuria, different names for the same memory, a world that fell, and a wisdom buried beneath it. The awakening. But the story doesn't end in loss, because we are beginning to rediscover what they knew. We're learning again that vibration affects matter, that geometry underlies nature, that consciousness interacts with energy. Science is finally catching up with myth. Quantum physics speaks of fields connecting all things. Ancient texts spoke of spirit connecting all souls. Two languages, one truth. And maybe, just maybe, this was the purpose of the monuments, not to glorify gods, but to remind us of our own divine nature. That creation is not something that happened once. It's something we participate in every moment, through thought, emotion, and will. The ancients weren't worshipping stone. They were mirroring the universe. The return of the builders. Every civilization believes it is the first. But Derinkuyu whispers otherwise. Göbekli Tepe whispers otherwise. The stones of the Andes, the pyramids of Egypt, the echoes of Malta, all whisper the same truth. We have been here before. Maybe history isn't a straight line, but a circle, an endless cycle of remembering and forgetting. Each time we rise, we rediscover fragments of the blueprint. We rebuild, we ascend, and then we fall again. But every fall leaves traces, and those traces are what we now call mysteries. Perhaps the ancients didn't vanish. Perhaps they became us, their blood in our veins, their knowledge buried in our DNA, waiting for the right vibration to wake it. So is the silent message. In the end, every monument is saying the same thing. Wake up. Remember who you are. You are not a spectator of the universe. You are part of it, a note in its eternal song. When you speak, when you think, when you love, you create ripples that echo through reality itself. That's what the ancients meant by divine creation. Not gods shaping worlds, but worlds shaped by consciousness. Their temples were mirrors, to show us that heaven was never in the sky. It was always in us. The eternal blueprint. As the camera pans across the Giza Plateau, across the jungles of Peru, across the mountains of Turkey, you begin to see it, the pattern connecting all things. Not chaos, not randomness, design. The same geometry that guides galaxies also shapes your heartbeat. The same frequency that resonates in ancient stone hums in your brain. We are the continuation of the same blueprint, a living part of a plan too vast to comprehend, too perfect to deny. The ancients left us the map, not to worship, but to remember. And the path it shows leads not outward, but inward, because the greatest temple ever built is the human mind. And once you awaken that temple, every mystery becomes clear. The journey is complete, but the story never ends. Every ruin, every riddle, every ancient whisper was pointing toward a single truth, that humanity's oldest secret was never about gods or machines, but about consciousness itself. The ancients didn't vanish. They became the silence between our thoughts. And if you listen closely enough beneath the noise of the modern world, you can still hear them, teaching, guiding, waiting, because they knew one thing we are only beginning to rediscover. Civilizations rise and fall. Empires come and go, but knowledge, true knowledge, never dies. It waits in stone, in stars, in us. And when the world is ready to remember, the blueprint awakens again,